We're going to kick off. Welcome to everybody for coming in. Nice to see you, especially all of our friends in the States on this Independence Day long weekend. And I hope you have a great weekend. First off, I want to say thank you very much to Mark Hart, who covered the sessions for me for the last couple of weeks while I was in the hospital. I am out of the hospital. I'm back home now. From what I heard, Mark did a fantastic job leading the discussions. The first week apparently was nothing more than social networking, which is probably one of the most important aspects of square dancing that is overlooked. One of the reasons why it's important to go to color schools, to color seminars, and various other sessions, because you never know who you're going to meet and how that's going to affect your career later on, and who you get those contacts and those social contacts to actually help you out through your calling career. So take advantage of all those when they do happen. And Mark, thank you very, very much. And thank you to everybody else for coming in and participating in those discussions. Today, what we're going to be talking about is isolated site. Now, we talked about isolated site last May. We did the first part where we set up to a corner box. We worked two-couple calling. We talked about the applications of two-couple calling in the Sicilian circle. And we talked about using isolated site, calling to two couples, taking a snapshot, picking up two couples in a module, moving them around, bringing them back to the footprint, and then finishing your module. Just the very, very basics. And that was a year ago. And we've had lots of time to practice. We've touched on isolated site through the year. And now, as requested, we're going to go into the second part of isolated site, and that's maximizing the use of isolated site for success. And there we go. So isolated site is a calling technique. This is just to review here, used to isolate or to separate two couples in a square. Now, in theory, the method of isolated site is to move the selected or those isolated dancers through a series of choreographic sequences while keeping them together in a paired relationship that is separate from the other dancers. It doesn't mean they can't interact. You just keep those four separate and you work those four in how you're going to use them. Now, as long as there's never another dancer, i.e. not one of the four that you're working with, as long as there's not another dancer in that group reacting with that group, they're considered isolated, and the techniques of isolated site apply. So in keeping those two couples isolated or separate in the square, it's possible to use a variety of choreographic maneuvers and sequences that still keep them separate, and you're still working two couples, but give you the feel of interacting with the entirety of the square. So in basic terms, what isolated site is a two couple people mover technique used in conjunction with a complete square. And it's the application of two couple dancing. It's only done with a full square moving at the same time. So it's not just two couple calling, which a lot of us are doing now on Zoom or in a Sicilian circle, and then we move to another two couples and who is behind me doesn't count, like Italian race car driving. You basically only work with two chosen couples and you ignore the others and you ignore what they're doing. You keep an eye on them to make sure they do it right. But they're going to do what you want them to do, the other couples. That's due to the mirror image concept of the squares. And they don't interact unless you want them to. So any interaction that they have is based on what you want them to do. So as you can see in the image on the screen, if I set up a corner box like here, I've got them isolated. So side couples, number one man, number three lady. Okay. And this box, of course, is in the wrong way because it's side couples here. But I can also isolate this box and work with them. I can isolate this box this way and work with them that way. I can isolate here. I can isolate here. I can isolate here. They're all in different positions around the square, except for this one where I've drawn the box around the wrong people. But they're still working together. And the others are doing exactly the same thing because of the mirror image. Now, before we talked about isolated site, we said there's a number of advantages. Now, the technique of isolated site allows the caller and the dancers to concentrate on the specific nuances of your selected choreography without having to worry about the rest of the square. And again, that's that mirror image concept. What one half does, the other half does. The snapshot, which we use that term an awful lot, or some people call it a burnt image, it's the aspect of or a technique that allows the callers a quick path to a get-out resolution in case of difficulty with his or her choreography. In other words, you put them where you want to, you say, right, that's the footprints they're on. I'm going to work those two couples. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I just get them back to that footprint. They're resolved. It's a quick path. And you're usually only 2, maybe 3 movements away from getting them back to that exact footprint if you're working those 4 couples, or sorry, those 2 couples only. Another advantage, it facilitates very easy teaching of movements. And the reason for that is most square dance calling is done with 2 couples only. There's not a lot of couple interactive movements that require all 8 dancers. There are a few, but until you get into the higher levels, most of your calling is really done with 2 couples. Number 4, it gives the advantage to the caller of only really having to concentrate on a selected isolated couples when using crossover movements or the interactive throwaway sequences, the modules, or when geographically moving them around the square. And what I mean, for instance, if I'm going to use an interactive, so I set up a corner box, step to an ocean wave, a scoot back. I'm now working with the others behind me, but it brings me back to my isolated group. That's an interactive. A 2-face line, Ferris wheel, centers pass through. That's an interactive. Or a throwaway module, Linda, that was the name I was trying to remember earlier in the conversation. Hi, Linda, welcome. A throwaway module such as the swing through, spin the top, slide through. I'm not even really thinking about it. Or a flip-flop, like an 8-chain 4, which is not going to change anything, but it's going to interact the square and bring me back to that same footprint position. So it gives me the advantage of really concentrating on those 2 couples while using all those little techniques to interact. And lastly, it allows the caller to concentrate on the isolated dancers while still giving the feeling of total interaction with the rest of the square. So it's the dancer's feeling and that dancer perception that we're looking for. You may think it's boring, I'm just doing the same thing on the other side of the square. The dancers are not going to think that because they're moving around and they're interacting with different people. So trust yourself on that one. And of course, with any advantages, there's got to be disadvantages. And isolated sight, like all calling techniques, do have disadvantages. The first and foremost, isolated sight can easily lead to overflow or redundant choreography if the caller is unprepared or if the dancer ability is limited. Okay. If you're going to use isolated sight techniques, you really have to know your craft and you really have to be able to work your craft. You have to understand that I need a direction change, things like a right and left through to change that direction. And you have to be able to adapt. Roz was telling us the other day, earlier, that the dance she called, the dancers had restrictions on what they could do. So it really limits what she can do with the dancers on the floor. Isolated sight is no different. Second, it's susceptible to becoming a caller crutch, and therefore it ends up becoming predictable when new material is being introduced. If you are going to use isolated sight, which is a great and fantastic technique, but you only go to that head square through. Now I'm only going to use that box. I'm going to work that box. You're going to dance with those 4 people all night. That's the end of the tip. We're going to do a singing call and you're going to dance with that same box. Dancers notice that very quickly, that they're not interacting with the square, and it becomes a crutch to you because it's easy. You have to expand that technique to hide that. And finally, this is the new one that adds on. It can lead to very long routines if you're not careful. And the reason it leads to long routines is because it is so phenomenally easy and often so successful in the dancer's understanding and comprehending what you want to do that you don't worry about resolving, okay? And you lose track of the time. And don't worry, I'm going to show you a way to fix that near the end of this session. Okay, so what we know so far, in the previous sessions, we looked at isolated sight in terms of 2-couple calling and through the use of interactives, like I said, the Ferris wheel, the centers pass through, scoot backs, flip flops, and that kind of stuff. What you have to think of, isolated sight really has 3 parts. The 3 parts are the setup, the action, and the resolution. Okay. So within those 3 parts, there's really 4 steps to it. One is to select your key couple. That's normally, you know, when you set up the square, you select a key couple. Usually couple number 1 is your primary, couple number 4 is your secondary, but whoever you remember as your primary couple and the couple on their left is usually what. Step 2 is you get into a known phasor. Usually a corner box is where we start. Okay, and that's your snapshot. That's where you visualize the dancers, where the footprints are on the floor. You're going to move them around and get them back to those footprints. Then step 3 is your choreography. So if you've got a highlight movement like flutter wheel as an example, this is where you're going to use the isolated sight techniques of the 2 couples with the interactives and all that other kind of stuff, just to make it feel ready, make it feel good, all the other kind of stuff. And you're going to move them around using your focus movement where you want it. What we did before is if we were using a flutter wheel, we would do head square through, take our snapshot. Great, what are we going to do from here? Okay, we could do a right and left through and flutter wheel, or we could do a star through or reverse flutter wheel, just to use our highlighted movement and then move them around to get them back to the place we want. And that's step 4. Step 4 is when we're ready to resolve, we return to that snapshot position. And if it's a corner box, we can call an Alaman left, or if we've done it from a partner line, we've got a key couple on the left, we can call an Alaman left or a circle left, or any partner line or corner box get out that we have prepared. That's as far as we've taken it so far. And we've changed our snapshot with the chicken plucker, but we haven't really said, what are we going to do? We've still kept corner box, cross the street box, corner box, cross the street box, and used modules just for the variety. We're going to take that to the next step. I just said all that. Okay, so in this slide, if we do a setup, let's just do a head square through, we snapshot to a corner box, isolated sight, and this is, we just call whatever we want here, get them back to that footprint. We do an interactive swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, pass through. Doesn't really do anything. It's just a nice little module 0, back to that snapshot. We do a module. Okay, this is a module. We talked about modules. That is just taking us from one position back to the same position. It could be a invert and rotate module. It could be a flip-flop module, but we know it's going to take me from a corner box to a corner box, so I don't worry about it. I'm not going to be sight calling after that. I'm going to be getting out. So my module, touch a quarter, centers cross run, split circulate, men cross run, right and left through, and so on and so forth. And then we resolve, swing through, boys trade extend, right and left grand. I had that prepared, but I could also easily sight that out. And you notice there, it's, I'm pointing at my screen. You can't see me pointing at my screen. Where it says snapshot corner box, at any time you're in that corner box, you can do that half chicken plucker and call that module on the other side, and then do the half chicken plucker and bring them back. So what we're going to do is just have a quick look at that. Just so, is my Taminations up on your screen? Anybody?
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so if we looked at that sequence, so we did a head square through. Okay, and then we did our isolated sight. I'm going to use this routine to represent isolated sight, but it can be anything. Swing through, spin the top, slide through. Okay, so if you see this, my snapshot here, I did a head square through, I got to this corner box, then I did my isolated sight, I moved them around, I got them back to that spot. That swing through, spin the top, slide through. Yes, I know that's a module, but we're just going to use that to represent the isolated sight. Okay, then I'm going to do an interactive, make it feel like I'm reacting with the rest of the square. Use swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, centers, pass through. And of course, it doesn't like swing through for some reason. Swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel. Centers pass through. That's just a little interactive module. It's a nice little zero. It's one of your basic foundation modules, but it has that Ferris wheel interaction where the dancers are actually looking at other members of the square and they're actually interacting with it. Now I want to do a corner box to a corner box module. And this is one that I had prepared for use in isolated site because I need time to think. So I have something that's going to really work. My focus was split circulate. So I'm going to use the split circulate. So touch 1/4. I'm not making this up here. This is a module. Touch 1/4, centers cross run, split circulate, men cross run, and then what I have, I think I had it right and left through next. Right and left through. Okay, so I've done that, and you notice what I've done is I still have my snapshot position. My sides are still on the outside. Number 1 man is facing his corner. Number 3 lady is partnered. That's still a corner box. What I've done here is I've used a known module, corner box to corner box, but what it's done, it's rotated the square clockwise 90 degrees. It feels different to the dancers, but have I done anything to the square? No, I've just said, you're in a corner box, shift your position 1/4 to the right. That's all I've called. I didn't have to do anything. And then I have a known get out, which was swing through, boys trade, extend, right and left, brand, promenade home, maybe. Yeah, it's actually going to do it. Okay. And as I said, at our snapshot position of the square through, after our isolated site, after the interactive, after our module, at any time, I can call that Alaman left because the square is resolved. So thus far, it's been pretty simple and straightforward to practice the idea of calling 2 couples in a known Fazar state, i.e. the corner box, and then moving around with a focus, and everything else that we've done in there is memory work. You know, we've gone that resolution to the right and left grand to get that little bit of wow factor and all of that other kind of stuff. So what we've done is we've just said, hey, this works. I've moved the dancers around. I've done my isolated site. I've learned to expand the skill to move the dancers back to a footprint. That's resolving the square. And now I've used a module to give me that variety. And for the dancers, they're going, wow, this guy's good. Look at all the stuff that he or she is just making up on the fly. And it really, really works. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to expand that idea to the next step in development. Okay, so the idea of that is calling to follow a respectable 3-step process that we've taught: the setup, the action, and the resolution. Now, we're not talking resolution as in resolving the square, although that may happen sometimes. We're talking just the isolated group. We're going to set up the isolated group we want to work with. We're going to do the action, which is the isolated site, calling, but keeping them together, and the resolution, bringing them back to that snapshot footprint for the next step. And now it's this second part, the action, where we really begin to expand the use of isolated site. So let's look at each part, and we're just going to further our knowledge on that. So we'll start with the setup. The normal starting setup for learning is a corner box. It's a standard Alaman position, you know, head square through or head step in, face your corner. There's your corner, Alaman left. There's a lot of others, but let's just start there just to get this concept down. The basic concept is, and remains, that in an Alaman left position, there are 2 groups of dancers, 2 groups of 4 dancers each. So we've got one group over here, and we've got one group over here. Okay, so 2 couples. Most callers usually focus their attention when they're doing this on one of the 2 groups. They've got the paired couple on the outside, they've got their set couple in the middle. That's who they're focused with. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to use choreography that will keep those 4 dancers together so that when the caller wants an allemande left, he or she will simply use calls that can be done by those 4 dancers to get them back to that original footprint allemande left position. That's all about the setup. We're going to set it up and take a snapshot. That's where we want to go. So let's just switch over here and see how we put this into practice. Okay, so if we have a setup, let's say head square through. Okay. We've got a setup to a corner box. Now we can do anything that we want to get to that corner box. But let's say, for instance, in this tip, as a new caller, let's say Ed Foote has asked you to come to one of his clubs and says, I want you to call a tip for me and I want you to focus on the movement flutter wheel, just as an example, okay? And you're going, oh my God, Ed Foote, the master choreographer. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? I gotta use flutter wheel, I gotta use flutter wheel, I gotta use flutter wheel. Well, you don't have to panic. The principles are exactly the same. And you can use your flutter wheel or your focus movement in your setup, in your isolated site, in your modules, because you've all got modules or singing calls that use a flutter wheel and resolve to a corner. So there's lots of availability there. Don't panic. And you can set up all sorts of things. So somebody give me a flutter wheel, use of a flutter wheel to get to a corner box. Anybody?
I got one. Swing through. I'm sorry, square through 4 and get in the corner box first. Square through 4.
No. I want you to set me up to a corner box. So heads do something and then end in the corner box.
Okay, head square through 4.
Sorry, what? No, I don't want to square through 4. But the square through 4 gets me to the corner box.
Heads, flutter wheel, sweep a quarter, pass through.
Oh, there you go.
Heads, flutter wheel. Oh, sorry, I gotta reset that. Heads, flutter wheel, and sweep 1/4. Enters. Faster. Okay, and now I've got a corner box. And absolutely correct. I could use anything, and I've used my flutter wheel, and Ed Foote's going, wow, gee, Mel, you've come a long way. You can use a flutter wheel to set up your corner box. I'm impressed. Well, guess what? We're not calling to impress Ed Foote. Ed Foote's going to be giving us critique and positive evaluation, but we're there to impress the dancers. But that in itself is going to impress the dancers. The same as if I did head ladies chain, heads flutter wheel, heads slide through, centers pass through, or I could do it with a reverse, heads right and left through, same heads pass through, partner trade, reverse flutter wheel, and sweep a quarter more, centers pass through. Guido talked to us beforehand saying, a flutter wheel and sweep a quarter and a reverse flutter do exactly the same thing. So I can do that. You can also be innovative in putting your corner box in a different position. Now, if I start everything heads, my corner box as if I did a head square through, well, it's going to feel like, oh, wow, he's setting up again. But you can also use your flutter wheel. Let's try this. 4 ladies chain, heads flutter wheel, and sweep 1/4, double pass through, leaders trade. Okay. Now, that's also a corner box, correct? Yes, that's correct. But notice all I'm doing is changing my snapshot so that I've got number 1 couple on the outside and their corners on the inside mismatched. For the dancers, that's going to feel absolutely, completely different. For you as a caller, it's just a corner box. Snapshot, that's the footprint position. That's what I want to do. What you do to get there and how you interact with dancers to use your focus movement are skills that you may choose or not choose, depending on what your plan is, what your achievement, and what your comfort level is. And what you have to remember is you have to work within your comfort levels. What works for you is the best way of doing it. the objective here is to get there and know what hand is free, what the body action is for comfort, and what you can do for the next call, regardless of how that corner box is set up for the snapshot. So what we've got is a start position of a corner box. Now, what this really means is, from a caller's point of view, what we're looking at is a matched couple on the outside, a mismatched couple on the inside, and they can all do an Allemande left. So the next step is the action, and this is where our focus is today. This is the meat of isolated sight calling. It's where you can pretty much call anything you want if you want to keep those four dancers together in a box. Thus far, we've only concentrated on moving them in and out of that same corner box. What we're going to do is we're going to expand that idea to include other formations that keep the group together, as well as moving them around to different locations in the square. Okay, these formations can include ocean waves, lines, columns, etc., any kind of formation that you want, as long as you're keeping them together. Alan Kerr mentioned the technique rubber banding about a year ago. This is essentially what it is and what we're talking about. The idea of rubber banding literally means that the caller imagines a rubber band, in this case, the red box, which goes around my four selected dancers. And then I can essentially call anything that will keep those four dancers together in the formation. And what that does, it allows for short interactions with the other four dancers, but always keeps your four isolated dancers together, and hence the term isolated sight. So you can see in a corner box, we're isolated. In facing lines, the same group are isolated. In a column, the same four are isolated. In ocean waves, the same four are isolated. If I flip-flop the ocean waves and I change who it is, we've got girl, boy, girl, boy. It's still isolated. It's the same group of four. But notice, and every formation that you go through, you notice they're moving around the square in different setups. Sometimes they're facing in, sometimes they're facing out, but they're all together. Like here in this column, notice they're all together on one side. But over here in this column, they're all in a straight line. They're still isolated and working together. And what this does, it allows me the freedom of movement to go through a whole bunch of choreography and still keep them together by having that rubber band around the dancers. Now, Ed Foote wrote a paper back in, I think it was the late 80s, and I think it was just recently updated as well, talking about several calls or module sequences, or sorry, several calls, not modular sequences, that keep dancers together. The idea when using isolated sight is to watch the selected dancers or those isolated dancers and keep them moving, not worry about the other four because of the mirror symmetry of the square. So, you know, what you've got is examples that are going to keep four dancers together, and they are really, really good movements to keep into your repertoire when using isolated sight. Ed, are you with us today? I thought I saw him come in a little bit earlier, but okay. So if we go back to Taminations, let's just reset that. So if we set up a corner box, so let's just have if we set up a corner box, and we're looking at movements that are going to keep these dancers together, but change the formation and change who we're looking at. So the classic one, of course, is touch 1/4, and notice that they're still together. Actually, what I'll do is okay, so that group in black is still together. And from a touch 1/4, I can do things like scoot back. And they're all still together. I can do a walk and dodge, and they're all still together. I can do a split circulate, and they're all still together. I can do a girls fold, and they're all still together. See, they're all, but I've changed the organization each time. From waves to lines to whatever. I can do a girls run. Now they're working in a line. They're all still together. So that's the whole idea. Things that you can follow on, for instance, a touch a quarter gives you so much flexibility to move, and it feels like your whole square is interacting because you've changed your aspect, which wall you're facing, but you're still really working your initial setup. Okay, there's another thing that we've got, which is called the two-face line setup. And that's usually done by swing through, boys run. Okay, notice it's a two-face line setup. They're all together. Now we can do now it feels like I'm really moving around the floor, but notice that that couple is still separate and interactive. If I change the aspect, now I'm looking at completely different dancers, but they're still all together. You know, I can do a couple circulate twice. Now I've got a completely different aspect facing different walls again, and I've moved and I've seen all the other dancers in the square, but they're all still together. And after, I flip-flop the square, so any of those isolated sight techniques, like if you're in plus, you could use a ladies hinge and work diamonds, but because we're just going to limit this to mainstream, we've done bend the line. How about tag the line? Face right. We can do that again. We can do a couples circulate. The group is still together. Okay. We can do a bend the line. The group is still together. We can do a pass through. The group is still together. All of that will flow from the circulates. And from here, we can also, if we want to change it to change the aspect to work for two facing couples, simple one, chain down the line or a bend the line. All of those things will work to keep those groups isolated and together. And finally, we've got the last setup really for working the isolated side. There's a lot of them, but I'm only looking at 3 because it's a really, really good place to start. Okay. This is called the slide through or the star through setup. And when I say setup, I've got my snapshot. Now I'm setting up to work isolated site. So I'm starting my isolated site, but I'm starting it with a purpose. So in this case, my purpose is the slide through to get my facing couples to work independently. And I can do all sorts of things like pass through. I can do my focus was flutter wheels. So I did a slide through. Let's do a reverse flutter wheel. Great. I can do things like pass the ocean, hinge, split, circulate. I can do whatever I want. Okay, face right. Okay, move them around freely within that independent group of 4, and that is truly isolated. And I can mix and match those. I can do the veer left, couple circulate, bend the line, pass through, bend the line, and do it just in a different position, and it's going to feel completely different again. And of course, there is other stuff such as square through 4, changes the aspect, and you can do all sorts of things. A right and left through, a square through, a veer left, all of those other things will change the aspects, swing through, spin the tops, left swing throughs. Any 2 couple combination that has flow and movement will work. So if I were to look at that, let's just get back to our corner box. So if I did, for instance, right and left through, our focus is flutter wheel. Okay, a bit tight, veer left. Ooh, what did I want to do that? Okay, I'm still there, not sure. I can just chain down the line and make it comfortable for me looking at the dancers. I've done a chain down the line, so let's get it sorted out. Flutter wheel. And from here, veer left. Ooh, that keeps it crowded, but I do another one of these. And lo and behold, I've resolved the square, and I've used my focus move. So using those ideas, the entire sequence is made up and developed. So you can do something like a setup. What have we got here? Anybody remember our flutter wheel setup? Somebody give me a flutter wheel setup to a corner box. A different
Flutter
one.
wheel,
Heads flutter wheel.
reverse the flutter, half sachet, slide through.
Hang on. Heads reverse flutter. What was after your half sachet?
Slide through.
Center slide through. Okay, perfect. So I've used both my flutter wheel and my reverse flutter wheel, and I've set up my box for isolated sight. And I can do all sorts of things from here, such as right and left through. Hang on. Let's just undo that first. Okay, and we're going to go set up complete. Isolated sight. Okay, so we'll do a right and left through, veer left, and let's change it up. Let's make it a little more complex because we've got a really good group of dancers here. It doesn't have to be basic, simple. It doesn't have to be easy. It works. So let's do girls. Cross run. End the line. Square through 3. Notice they're all still staying together. Partner trade. Let's change that to a star through. Star through. California twirl. Why did I change the slide through to a star through? Anybody?
Right and left hand availability.
And well, not so much that. It's the matter that the contact for the California twirl was already made, so they don't have to fumble. It stops them wanting to go ahead. You're right. Okay, and now.
And it probably helped them because we were half sachet. The whole time they were lucky to hold on to someone.
Yep, and that star through normalizes. They've got the hand contact. A California twirl will give them that. Those are little things that you need to concentrate on. We've talked about that in other sessions. Okay, so now I want to start moving the dancers around. So far, I've had them there in that group. So this is where these techniques will come up. And what did we use? We used okay, notice I'm going left-handed here, but notice that the group of 4 is still together. And the line. Notice that they're still together, but I've changed the complete aspect of the square. Here I can do an interactive. That's an interaction, but they're still together. And now I've got couples. Okay, what have I got here? I can do anything I want. What have I done? A pass-through. So let's go half tag. Let's circulate. Boys run. Okay, and notice I've still got my tandem group of 4 together. I want to get them both back on the same side. So let's just do a couples circulate. There they are. They're on the same tide, but let's do that again. Because you're calling and you call to circulate twice. Bend the line. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Oops, I did something that I can't interact those couples easily. I could do a zoom to keep them interactive, but okay, and now I've got all of that kind of stuff on the go. That's just moving the dancers around using isolated sight techniques. And as you can see, let's just copy that. And I've got to figure out how to get back to the Zoom here. How do I paste this in the chat? Chat. Everyone. Somebody asked me to paste that sequence in the chat, so I just did that. Okay, so what I've done is I've moved the dancers around just willy-nilly. I'm not really worried about anything, but notice I'm back in my corner box. If I was doing the action, let's just reset all this. And I have my focus sequence. I need to focus on using flutter wheel at least once or twice in my sequence. I want both a reverse flutter wheel and I want a flutter wheel. So I've done my setup to a corner box or however I've got there. Watch my black dancers there, the ones in black. So this time I'm going to use that slide through to make the facing couples in the line. And that's the technique I'm going to use here. So I've done my slide through, I've got that. After a slide through, a reverse flutter wheel really works well. Pass through, bend the line. Okay, so far there's no problem with any of that. It's going great. I've still got them paired. Pass through. Now I want to get them paired, but I don't want to do another bend the line, but I want them to do a bend the line. Use something like cast off 3/4. I'm now still paired and it feels good. It feels different. But notice I'm still only calling to the 2 couples. I've done a right and left through. Well, let's obviously follow that with a flutter wheel. Okay. And then I can do a pass through, bend the line. Oh. Pass through. And last time I called a wheel and deal, didn't I? Oops. Okay, so I've set this up. I've looked at it and I realized that I've got to turn those centers around. Remember what I said about doing the interaction, Ferris wheel centers pass through? I can do exactly the same thing to turn that center couple around and get them interacting with what movement? Anybody?
Square through 3.
Center square through 3, perfect. And that does exactly the same as a center's wheel around, center's California twirl, center's right and left through and pass through, does exactly the same. And now I can get back to what I was doing. Let's go split the outsides. Let's change it up a bit. Outsides separate around 1 to a line. There you go. And because they were coming from the outside, we can do this. Bend the line. Pass through. Oh, I need to sort this out quickly because my sequence is getting long. Let's do a partner trade. My focus is flutter wheel. What comes after a flutter wheel? Oh, partner trade. Hey, look at that. They're half sashayed. Let's do a reverse flutter wheel. let's do a flutter wheel. Now I've done all of that, and I can play with it. Now, my sequence is getting a little bit long. What do I need to do? I need to return to that footprint. I have totally mixed this square up. Somebody get me back to my footprint, which would be the number 4 couple, standard couple on the outside, and the mismatched couple on the inside.
You should have done a flutter wheel sweep a quarter with it, doesn't it?
Now I'm half sashayed, so the first thing we got to do always is normalize. Remember that?
Box the gnat.
Star through.
Star through or a box the gnat, either one of them will work. Somebody said box the gnat first, so we'll use that. There's the box the gnat. I'm now into normal couples. And very quickly, you can see from here, normalizing while they're together, you're never really more than 3 movements away. The only limitation of setting that back up, and that is all, that's just moving the dancers around. But you notice that the couple in black, you could really see that's what was meant when Alan Kerr talked about rubber banding. And this is what we're talking about with isolated sight. We're keeping those dancers together. Did everybody see that? I hope so. Okay, so, and that's what it is. It's teamwork, and you basically keep the dancers together. So the last part of this is the resolution. And within the terms of isolated sight, this simply means using calls that are going to put the dancers back into Alaman left or the corner box position, which is what we just did. It uses the same term and often is the resolution to the square, because if we start in a corner box and we get back to the corner box, we can call an Alaman left, but it doesn't have to be. Remember, the power of isolated sight is once you set up the corner box, you can establish all sorts of different corner groupings, and you can just call to them individually, and you move them around. The mirror aspect is going to have the other dancers doing the same thing, and you can focus on what you're doing with those 2 couples. So whatever 2 couples you choose, you have to remember where their formation footprints start and put them back to that formation footprint. That's what we talk about when we talk resolution, is a formation footprint, not a square resolution, but it's a formation footprint of the 4 dancers that we're going to choose to look at. So when we look at that, at the beginning of the process, we start with setting up, in this case, to a corner box. We can also set up to an across the street box or a right-hand lady box out of sequence. That's by doing the half chicken plucker. These are the most common ones that we have. Okay, so we've got the corner box, and we've done a right and left through pass through trade by, or right and left through dive through centers pass through. There's our half chicken plucker, sets up a right and left, a right-hand lady box or across the street box. Or we have partner lines. Heads lead right circle to a line. Those are our 3 most common setups that we're going to use. So when we look at those, okay, what we're going to do is look at calls which place the dancers back into that 8-chain-4 formation. Our start of the isolated site was not a geographic location, but remember, it's a phasar of 4 couples. In this case, we started with a corner box with the heads on the outside. So we can set that up any which way we want. Let's just go, let's change this black. Yellow, blue. Okay, so we'll go. Okay, so what we've done is we set up a corner box with the heads on the outside. So where we were before, we were in facing lines, half sashayed. What did I do there? What did I do? Actually, it's a good thing I copied that. let's go back to where we were here. Reset. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. My mind is not quite with it. Why are you not playing my game? There we go. Outside, separate. Flutter wheel and reverse. All right, that's where we were. Okay, so what we've looked at is the mirror image had the others doing the same thing. Whatever we've done, we're going to move to the footprint start. And at the beginning, it was recommended that you start with those three setups, the corner box, the partner line, and chicken plucker. So what we've done is we've set up our initial setup with the heads on the outside, which we did, and we left you in this position. Okay, and we were half sashayed. We did a box the gnat. We could do all sorts of things. We've done the pass through, turn back. Pass the ocean. What did we do last time? We did a box. That's it. Undo. We did a box net, was it? Yeah. There we go. Okay, so we've now resolved our isolated site. We used the corner box. When you start thinking other fast and simple calls to normalize, when you've got things like that, you've got to keep your options open. Now, we did a couple of very, very quick ones. But from that position, we could do a touch a quarter, split circulate, girls run to normalize, then a right and left three. We could do a touch a quarter, scoot back, split circulate, boys run. All of those other kinds of things. Remember, right at the beginning, we had movements that keep these dancers together. Those movements, touch a quarter followed by those kinds of things, are always going to work. Another one we have is, we talked in one of the resolution sequences to normalize. Pass through, tag the line, face in. Whenever you have half sashayed lines, that's a good way to normalize. Then you can do like a left touch 1/4, just to give a different feel. Split circulate, girls run. And from here, it's just a right and left through. You can do all sorts of different things to sort that out and change where you are on the floor. Remember, the key is what we're not looking for is to get back to that exact footprint location on the floor, exactly where we are at after a head square through. What we're looking at is reestablishing that corner box, moving them around. Our setup is the sides on the outside, We've now set that up. We just put it in a different location, in this case, halfway across the floor, which is perfect for us because we can do an Allemande left and a right and left grand to home, or whatever. I wouldn't do an Allemande left after right and left through. But you understand the principle of what I'm actually talking about there, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that's a lot of information on how to maximize isolated site. The last part of this session that we're going to be talking about is the across the street variation of isolated site. Remember what I said at the beginning? There's 3 phasars to practice. They are the corner box, the right-hand lady box out of sequence, commonly referred to as an RBO or an across the street box, and the partner line. And now there's some people that are more comfortable with different formations, such as the RBO or corner lines. Whatever you're comfortable with and whatever is right for you is your starting point to do this. Okay, it's not my way is the only way. What works best for you is the correct way for you to start. Though the 3 I've given, though, are the most common that people use. Nonetheless, the techniques for every situation are exactly the same, but there is a nuance to across the street box, that variation that needs to be clarified. And there's a very simple common guideline that goes with the across the street box. And that guideline is only use across the street boxes once you're comfortable with the basic isolated site from a corner box. Okay. Practice the technique of getting to a corner box, the setup, the isolated site, and the resolution first. Practice that and master that first before you start doing the crossing the street. Okay. You've got to be able to do that. The term across the street essentially means that you're going to break up your group of 4 from the static square after you've done your square through. And the dancers are going to move, some of the dancers are going to move to the other side and visit. They're going to go across the block, across the street, and have a party with neighbors. What it does, it makes it so that everyone in the set is not always dancing with the same group of 4. Regardless of how well you mix up your rubber banding techniques, the dancers are eventually going to realize that they're only dancing with 4 people. That's human nature. No relationship inside or outside of square dancing is going to exist if 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you don't get a break from your partner. Trust me on that one. I've been there. Okay. Square dancing is no different. Okay. So we're going to define the street. And this everybody probably understands from our basic lessons. It's understood that if we draw an imaginary line that splits the head man and his partner, and we draw another line that splits the side man and their partners, one side is a mirror image of the other side. Well, we think of those lines that split them as the intersection. That's the middle of the road. Okay. They're essentially that dotted line in the middle of the street that we have to cross when we want to go and react with other people. And of course, the most common method of that is the chicken plucker, or sorry, the half chicken plucker, which is a right and left through, dive through, centers pass through, or any of those equivalents. Okay. That's the setup to restart that isolated process in the right-hand lady box or the across the street box. That's our new snapshot. What's important is to remember how you got there, how you got them across the street is not as important as don't overstay your welcome. Although it's important to go out and visit, it's just as important to realize that just like in real life, nobody likes visitors that overstay their welcome. You visit somebody with a purpose, then you go home. It's the same in square dancing. You visit the neighbors across the street, but you got to go home eventually. So if you cross the street, eventually you've got to cross back to get to your original corner box or your resolution position. Okay, and that can be done either intentionally or that can be done as part of the square resolution if you've got a module. Okay, the components and principles of isolated site with a right-hand lady box or an across the street box are exactly the same. You set it up. You could set it up with a head square through, or you can set up directly to a right-hand lady box. For instance, head star through, pass through. You can do all sorts of different things. You can do a heads pass the ocean, center ladies trade, spin the top, slide through. Bam, we're in a right-hand lady box, and we've hidden the fact that all we've done is just do head star through, pass through. This is where the sessions that we did on equivalence really come in handy. The next step is the action. And that's all rubber banding techniques again. We do exactly the same thing. All we've done is we've taken a snapshot of the new position and we're going to rubber band those 4 dancers and do exactly the same thing as we did with the corner box. Then the resolution, exactly the same. we're going to resolve back to that footprint, not the physical position on the floor, but the phasor footprint. So we've got the mismatched couple on the inside, the matched couple on the outside. The fact that they're in an across the street box doesn't matter. That's our across the street footprint. And remember when I said there's an extra step? The extra step is to call another half chicken plucker to get them back to their corner box. You have to get the dancers home. So with the resolution, you normalize, you get the match pair on the outside, that snapshot is resolved, then you got to send them home. And it's really, really quite simple. There's one rule of using cross the street variations, and that is the street must be crossed twice. When you choose the couple that's going to make the crossing, however, that's where you get to really, really play with the variety. And if you remember, we had Bob Elling was in here when we were talking about the chicken plucker using modules. He liked to do a pass-through trade by without the right and left. That moved them across the street, but kept them all in sequence. We started calling that a turkey plucker. It's not, but that's what we started calling it. It doesn't really matter who you send across the street. Remember what we said about sight. It's not about a geographic position on the floor, but rather a specific phasor. So the position is you have one couple paired, one couple mismatched, means in order to get across the street, you can have either the same couple cross the street twice, go over and back. You can have each couple cross the street once. Paired couple goes across, then the unpaired couple changes. You know, all we're doing is putting the four dancers together, and all we have to do after that is remember that once we put them back, we put the paired couple on the outside and we're in a corner box. So if we look at examples, let's set this up. Heads, star through. Can't type today. So if we do a head star through centers pass through, notice that we are not in our corner boxes. We're now in that across the street box. It would be the same as if we'd done head square through and then square through 3 trade by, or we did a half chicken plucker, or swing through boys run couple circulate, wheel and deal right and left. Any variation of a chicken plucker will set up that across the street box. Okay. Now, once we have that, we can do all sorts of different things. So look at our mismatched couple in the center there. Actually, we're going to change these back to their original colors. Come on. White, blue, yellow, yellow. Okay, so we've got the mismatched pair on the other side. So if we do, we're going to move a mismatched pair, the unpaired. So if we do a swing through, boys run, couples circulate. Notice where they are on opposite sides of the street. We've now moved the unpaired couple across the street, wheel and deal, right and left through. Okay, that's what we do. But we can also do it moving the paired couple across the street. So to steal from Bob Elling, pass through, trade by. I've moved the paired couple across the street. Now to get the matched couple on the outside, there's my across the street box. I can do all sorts of different things. I can also disguise how it is I want to do the couples moving across the street. For instance, if I do a touch 1/4, now notice I've got my paired couples are in the center, but they're in a box. I could split circulate twice, or I could move that paired couple by doing a centers trade. All I've done is change how I'm going to move them across the street. And then I'll do, I'll have the out facers run, but Taminations doesn't do that. So we'll have the,
We could do a split circulate and get them back.
A split circulate twice would do that as well. Okay, I had the outfacers run. And from here, what I've done is I've just moved them across the street, and I can do a slide through. And again, remember, instead of doing that reverse wheel around or whatnot, we've done this before. Centers, square through 3. I'm still using isolated sight, but it's a trade or equivalent, the star through, centers California twirl, or centers trade, or anything like that. All I've done is exactly the same thing. But in moving the paired couple, I just changed how I did it by saying touch a quarter, centers trade. Instead of keeping them on one side, I now move them across as a couple, but they're moving with different dancers. With practice and experience, what you get is you expand your knowledge and your ability. And many true sight callers that call themselves true sight callers, they do this, but they don't realize exactly what they're doing is using this as a repeatable technique. And what happens is when you start using these and learning them, you begin to see that the organizations and the groupings that you have, that corner grouping or right-hand lady grouping, then the actual corner box or the cross the street box, they really don't matter, because what you're going to be doing is isolating your sight from a footprint position, moving the dancers around to a footprint position in different places on the floor. For example, if we wanted to do an isolated sight routine with a focus on walk and dodge, we could set up a corner box and then take our snapshot. Then we can cross over one couple. We can take a snapshot. We can do our walk and dodge stuff. We can bring that couple back and then resolve the square. So if we did that, we would be looking at, let's start easy. Let's just do a head square through for sake of ease. Okay, and that's my first snapshot. Remember, that's the phasar footprint that I want, in this case, a corner box. So I do my isolated sight, touch one quarter, split circulate. As I want the boys to do it, I'll do a scoot back. Okay, my focus is walk and dodge. I want the boys walking. Okay, and I'll do a reverse wheel around. Okay, now I've finished my isolated sight action. Okay, I notice that I'm also normalized. Now I have to do the third part. I've done my setup. I've done my action. The third part of isolated sight is it within my own group of 4. I need to get back to my snapshot position. So let's pass the ocean, ladies trade, recycle. I've now finished that isolated sight, 3 parts. I've set it up. I've done my action. I've done my resolution within the box. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cross the street. So crossing the street. Let's do a box the gnat, just for the sake of it. Touch to a wave. Centers, trade. Boys run. Couples circulate. Okay, I'm moving my unpaired couple across. Okay, and then I can start right here. I can do a snapshot right here, but I'm not comfortable doing a snapshot from 2 face lines. I want to have something where I've got one couple facing another couple. So I'm going to do a bend the line. Okay, that's a much better snapshot position for me. Now notice I have an across the street box. It's a right-hand lady grouping, but it's in a line. Doesn't matter. This is my phasar footprint. I've got my side couples here, number 2 couple, number 1 man, number 3. There's my right-hand grouping. That's my isolated sight group. So I want to do my routine, which is now isolated site. Let's do a pass the ocean, hinge. Remember, I'm using the boys doing the walk and dodge. I want to do a cast left 3/4 from here, but contaminations won't let me do that. So I'll just write cast left 3/4. And we'll do that as a girls run left hinge. There's my cast left 3/4. I'll follow that with a chain down the line. I've finished my isolated site. I'm ready to resolve. First thing I've got to do is normalize. Oh my God, look at that. They're already there. I got to get my snapshot position. It's already there. I need a moment to think, what am I going to do? That would be an ideal place to use something like that. The caller needs a moment to think. So I can resolve the square from here, or I can do all sorts of things. My options are, I can pass the ocean. Sure, why not? Let's do this. Pass the ocean. Okay, hinge, walk and dodge. There's my walk and dodge again. Partner trade, star through. And now I'm in a position to move my unpaired couple across. Pass through, trade by. I'm back to my corner box. I've just moved them across. I could have also done it with a, let's go back here. I could have done a boy walk, girl dodge, boy run, slide through. And from here, I just finish it with a half chicken plucker. Right and left through, pass through, trade by. All sorts of different things. And if you want, where are we here?
Mel,
Yes,
do you mind if I interrupt there?
absolutely.
That setup you had is excellent because when you have a setup where you've got the right-hand group, plus in the same line you have your original corner group, should you muck up, remembering who was your second snapshot, you can just revert to your corner group and resolve.
Yep.
So if you go back to that line you were in, that right-hand group line where you had your corner in the same line as well, then things just like pass through, wheel and deal, and double pass through on the leaders trade is always
Absolutely. Those are that's square resolution. I'm going to talk on that briefly in a minute, but you're absolutely correct. For instance, what Alan is saying is, notice I'm working, this is my isolated right-hand group, but I'm only a bend the line from getting my original corner group. By doing that, I'm just going to cross the square just by bending the line and putting them back together. And you can do things like that, like pass through, bend the line. Whoops. Bend the line, bend the line. There we go. I've got a corner group, which is, this is what we could easily do. Now I can also use this, what Alan said, I can use that to expand by having my paired couple cross, changing to change who we're working with. Let's do that same boy walk, girl dodge. So in this case, I've had my paired couple just by doing a walk and dodge. It doesn't seem like they're crossing, but I've now moved my paired couple across. Boy run. See how they've moved across? They've gone from sides over here to sides over here, just by doing that, changing the center forward. slide through, I've now changed. And that's also a half chicken plucker. Pass through, bend the line, boy walk, girl dodge, boy run, slide through. These are skills that callers develop over time with lots of concentrated practice. All of these little routines and all of these comments and the little equivalents are in the note pages that'll be attached to the presentation. But remember, what you're going to see is with time and practical use of isolated sight, you can add variety to your calling and to your dancing at any point without really having to stretch your mind and try and think about what 8 dancers are doing simultaneously. From the caller perspective, what you've got is, I'm just doing a routine, I'm moving 2 dancers, I'm doing a routine, I'm moving 2 dancers, dancers are gonna get bored. The dancer perspective is very different. You as the caller may not see it as variety, but just moving them over and back with a focus movement, even if you repeat it. And even if you repeat the same routine, the dancers are going to see it very differently because they're moving around the floor, they're looking at different walls, they're dancing with different people, and they're interacting with each other. This is the next step in evolution of sight calling, and that's expanding your isolated sight from just the corner box to include the cross the street box. Just keep in mind, all we're still doing here is 2 couple calling. And as Alan said, if at any point you get lost using these techniques, you're always going to have 1 couple paired, and it's easy to get 1 couple paired, put them on the outside, and see where the centers are, where the corners are. You're only a couple of movements away from any resolution. With practice, what happens is you begin to see square resolutions. Like we did that earlier when we did the pass-through wheel and deal. It was like, oops, I didn't want to do that. I wanted the corner box, but I saw that resolution, my paired couples on the outside. I could call a square through 3, get out of it, Alaman left, right and left hand, take a breather, compose myself, and get ready to start again. The biggest advantage of practicing isolated sight routines in order to develop yourself as a caller is that they're going to help you with your movement mechanics. They're going to help you with the movement of the dancers within that grid, up and down and across the street. And you're going to get your eyes and mind focused on what individual movements do to change couples in and over a square. And what you're going to do is you're going to see things that you never thought of before. So let's just get this back to PowerPoint. And I'm just going to, yes, I will put that in the chat. There we go. Okay, so, whoops, that. Why is that? There we go. So one of the secrets of preparing for success in isolated sight is we've already said, start with the corner box, then go to the cross the street box, then go to the partner lines, or do it in the sequence that you're comfortable with. Whatever works for you to start is the right way. When you're learning this technique, remember, there is a third disadvantage, and that's when you start expanding isolated sight by rubber banding, your routines begin to get a little bit longer because you're focused and you're flushed with the success of everybody's doing exactly what you want. And that's going to happen. And it's a great feeling. But remember, you as a caller, you have to learn to rein yourself in. You need to take that break and enjoy that flush. But more importantly, the dancers need to take that break and enjoy that flush. So in order to do this, to prepare for success in sight calling, the key is prepare modules. You may never use them, but if you have them prepared and practiced, trust me, you're not going to regret preparing modules to get out quickly from different places to shorten your sequences. Okay, to shorten your routines, if they get out of hand, and also to give your mind a break, it's imperative that you start with and you gain experience. You have some very quick get out modules and some very quick modules prepared for each tip that you're going to present. Okay, there's 5 really, really good reasons to do this, to have, short modules. Okay? They allow you to get out from a known phasar. And we've got 3 known phasars that we're working with: corner box, cross the street box, and partner line. You can start with a different setup, and you can also convert any of those phasars to a fixed point. The fixed points, remember, your corner box and partner line, because we can Alaman left from there. Okay, we've got our 5 basic modules to convert from a partner line to a corner box. All you need is another one to take from an RBO or across the street box to a corner box, and you already have that one too, that's called the chicken plucker. So you can convert at any time from any of those locations. You can use modules, focus modules, to breathe and recompose your fixed points. Okay, get to a square through, or hit square through 4. I'm in a corner box. Oh, what was I going to do? Oh, what was I going to do? Oh yeah, I'm thinking flutter wheel. Okay, by the time you're thinking that through the mic, you're saying that through the mic, the dancers are going, oh, that caller's in a panic. You could easily say swing through, spin the top, slide through while you're thinking, because that's known, it's practiced, it works. You're giving yourself a breather to recompose. At any time, you can do a short get in to a fixed point and get out quickly. At any time in your sequence of isolated sight, you can resolve that. You can stop and say, right, I want to get that to a resolution within my isolated sight box and get to a fixed point, corner box or partner line. And it also allows you to set up those fixed points. In other words, your final sequence for that wow factor, you know, the get out, that, wow, where did that come? Where did that right? Wow, I'm at home. I didn't know how did they do that? You do that because you've got a module prepared from that particular setup, corner box, right-hand box out of sequence, or partner line. It makes you look good. It makes the dancers go wow, and everybody's happy. And I recommend, this is what I use. You can use what works for you. Start with a box module. That's a true zero, footprint to footprint, corner box to corner box without changing or without inverting it. A line module, same thing without inverting it. A corner box get out, a partner line get out, and a cross the street box get out, or a right-hand lady box out of sequence get out. Remember what I said, that works for me. What works for you is the best way. So for instance, we talked about flutter wheel. I'm just going to use reverse flutter wheel as an example. I might have something like this prepared that while I'm calling my patter and my isolated sight, I want to focus on isolated sight. I may have those prepared. I've got my singing call prepared, which I can also use as a routine if I need to in my patter. I may never look at that, but it's prepared. If I do need it, I can quickly glance and say, right, I need a breather. I'm going to just put them into a partner line and use a partner line. Heads, lead to the right, circle the line, pass through. Boys run, split circulate, boys run. Reverse flutter wheel, lines, pass through, partner trade. Reverse flutter, sweep a quarter more, everybody do a half sachet, right and left grand. I've used 2 modules, partner line module. I didn't have to think, I know they work. It's resolved to a right and left grand, and I've allowed myself time to take a breath, compose myself, and say, right, I'm ready to start again. I'm not going to go through those modules. We can look at them later if you want. Okay, so in summary, isolated sight is more than just 2 couple calling. Each couple routine has a setup, an action, and a resolution to it. Rubber banding allows for movement and interaction around the square without breaking the isolation of your 4 dancers. It's about a phasar footprint, not a geographic location on the floor. You don't have to stay in the same spot. You can move around the floor, just keep those 4 couples together. And we've already looked at some simple rotation modules from the first session we did on isolated sight. Swing through, boys run, bend the line, pass through, wheel and deal, centers pass. That rotates the corner box 1/4 to the right. And the other one, touch a quarter, circulate twice, cast off 3/4, right and left through, pass through, bend the line, rotates it 1/4 left. It allows you to move the dancers around the floor and feel different without changing anything. Very important, start small and build from there. Start with the corner box, then the right-hand box, then the partner line, or whatever works for you, but start small and build from there. And remember, across the street variations have specific rules. The primary rule is always cross the street twice. It doesn't matter who crosses, paired or unpaired, as long as there's 2 crossings. And finally, make sure you prepare your modules for success in sight calling. As we said before, isolated sight is only one tool in a caller's toolbox, but it is a very important skill where you start transitioning from hammers and saws to power tools and carpentry skills. Okay? You need to practice and practice multiple, and with practice, multiple snapshots are going to become easier. You need to practice your interactive crossovers so that they become second nature. The touch a quarter scoot backs, the veer left Ferris wheel, center pass, all those interactive crossovers, 8-chain 4s. They become second nature. What they do, you need to be aware of it. It's a very easy method of choreographic manipulation. It's a great teaching tool. Two-couple calling is a great teaching tool used in the Sicilian circle a lot. In a square, it's also a great teaching tool. But now you've got the flexibility of moving it and interacting with other dancers. Like all tools, you cannot build a house with one tool alone. You've got to learn them all and learn how to use them. I can show you how to use the tools. It's up to you to master your craft. You need to get in, learn those tools, learn how to manipulate them, and what to build with them. How good you get is entirely up to you. But just remember, it's always about the dancers first. They're the ones that have to succeed. They're the ones that have to win. And when they do it, you win. It only works one way. If the dancers aren't winning, but you've got fantastic choreography, you've already lost. Okay? So I've gone 25 minutes over time. I do apologize for that. But let's open it up for questions from the room. Mark, have you got anything? You still with us, Mark?
No, I haven't got anything.
Oh, that's the first. Right, let's open the floor up for discussion. That's a lot of material there. Like I said, it's all going to be available in the handouts, as is the PowerPoint presentation. Mark has that. So does anybody use isolated site or these types of isolated routines in their calling now?
Yes.
How do you get started, and how do you find they work for you?
Well, I use it a little bit differently than what you've described. I have problems with trying to make the quick recognition of a new foursome. So what I do instead is I start off with, I identify a matched pair in the square. Let me, just as example, let me say that it's a number one couple. Well, you do a square through 4 to get your box 1-4 arrangement. All right, they're in the same quote line. And that's going to be the resolution. That's the thing that you want to keep track of, is you want to keep them in the same line. Then you don't need to worry about the other people.
Absolutely. That's the mirror image aspect. You also twigged on something there, Eric, that I forgot to mention. When you're using isolated site, it doesn't matter which couple you choose as the key couple. As Eric said, he tries to get a matched pair. Once he identifies a matched pair, he'll move the other ones in. So if, let's say it's your number 4 couple is all dressed in yellow, he'll have the head square through. But if it's the number 3 couple that is all dressed in yellow, he might have the side square through. That puts the matched couple on the outside, and he can do a quick isolated site routine or a 2-couple module, move them around while he's memorizing who is that key couple for the resolution. It's a good way of doing it and really isolating where your corner box is. And as Eric said, he likes to work in line. So as long as he keeps those 4 couples together in his line, he can move them around.
No, I don't
sorry, go ahead.
Interpreting. I don't necessarily work in lines. It's just that, they're all going to be in sequence when those 2 dancers are in the same line. And in this case, if it was the number 1 pair and we started with the square through 4, they need to be in the middle. All right.
Yep.
All right. Then we're ready to go. All right. And if there is not, you want to be able to use both the heads and the sides. So, you don't have to start, if the match pair is number 1, you don't have to start with couple numbers 1 and 3. You can start with 2 and 4, but now you're going to have your matched pairs as a matched pair on the outside, that one pair that you know. And then I do the rubber banding sort of thing. You rubber band any 2 dancers out of the foursome, and you can move those 2 dancers around to anywhere. Doesn't make any difference. Any way that you want. All you have to do is bring them back to that original other 2.
Yeah. Yeah. What you're getting into there is actual site calling.
No.
That's as opposed to isolated site. You're isolating 2 dancers rather than the foursome.
Yes,
and it is it's an excellent technique. It's a little bit more advanced than just
Absolutely.
isolated site.
I
It seems
call this-
counterintuitive, but it is.
I call this a hybrid one couple site system, which has got the isolated site in it. It's got, I use mental image as part of it, concepts from mental image. I do it a little bit differently than what Don Beck did, but it works much the same way.
Yep, absolutely. And what it is it's one of the cursors of, by cursors, I mean like precursors to actual site calling, where you've established your setup and you're using all of those techniques. Again, you're using mental image, you're using modules, you're using site calling, you're using isolated site. By identifying one couple and keeping them together and moving them around to interact with the other dancers in the square, you're achieving exactly the same goal. As I said, that is, and it's a perfectly good technique. And if that's your starting technique, that is absolutely fantastic, because you've got the grasp of the other concepts that get you there fast. And some people do that. They pick up a more advanced concept a lot faster than the others. What you've got there is a precursor to actual physical site calling, moving by watching one couple. Eventually it's going to go to the one dancer. But it is a more advanced technique, and well done. We should actually get you in here to talk about your system as well sometime, Eric.
Yes, with new callers that I've taught, I teach them how to do this, and then they progress on to memorizing two adjacent couples to do, extemporaneous full site calling.
Yep, works well. Michael, did you have your hand up? Or were you just
Yeah, I'd like to add something to with the formation, the faster which you burn in there. And I mean, I think we're all able to set up a partner line or a corner line.
Yep.
And very easily you can set up a right-hand lady line and as well an opposite lady line with a simple routine you can use every time. If we get in common, if we keep in mind, if we have the line and we call past the ocean, then we're across the street. We have the girls trade, which brings them back over, swing through, brings the boys back over, boy run, bend the line, and we just done a zero. So nothing happened, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
Past the ocean, girls trade, swing through, boy run, bend the line, and we're right where we at. Now, if you do the past the ocean.
Hang on, Michael, what I'm going to do is, because we've got a lot of new callers, is I'm just going to demonstrate what you're saying rather than having everybody follow it in their minds.
Okay.
So you set up with a corner box. Now, what he's saying is you can set up these snapshot or the burnt image of your two couple isolated site from any formation, and he's absolutely correct. Corner line, whatever you're comfortable with.
Right.
I started with corner box, opposite across the street box, and partner line, because those are the three most common. But Michael is whatever you're most comfortable with, absolutely correct. And some of these formations, such as corner line, are much easier to work with.
And
Go ahead.
I'd like to show if you can put it on with the termination, then they can
sorry.
follow.
I forgot to hit the share screen button. Sorry. There you go.
Okay, so for general, what we first did, we got the zero right, slide through, which we would get a corner line.
Okay, so this is
what
this
we
is
need
where
to
you would,
know.
this is where you would take your snapshot, right?
Right, this is where I take my snapshot, and if I want to get from a corner line to a right-hand lady line, where I take my next snapshot, where we want to go, I just want to show a system or the mechanics of it. So if we call past the ocean, girls trade, swing through.
Okay. Do you want to show up that right hand grouping
Swing
now,
through.
or you want to? Okay,
Just a second.
that's all right.
Boy run. Bend the line. Then we are back to where we were. Like we're all in sequence, we have the corner line, whatever. Now, if we remember that an all 8 circulate from parallel ocean waves gives the 480s chain effect, we can do the same thing past the ocean. Now we do the all 8 circulate. Then we continue with the routine we had. Girls trade, swing through, which brings the boys over on the other side as well. Boys run, bend the line, and there we have the corner, the right-hand lady line. What we got to know is that a corner line will, with this routine, create a right-hand lady line and a partner line, like heads lead right, circle to a line. We use the same routine, would create an opposite lady line. Okay, if we want to go back, we would just use the same routine. After the past the ocean,
Sorry, my typing is not good today.
and the funny thing is, we could use the routine and then call an all 8 circulate as well, and have the same effect.
You want to do that? It's up to you.
Well, then we would have to do girls trade, swing through. Now we got everybody back on the same side. All 8 circulate. Boy run. Bend the line, and there we would have to corner line. Even though we are not in the same spot we were before, we moved around the square.
Yep. And that's using the all 8 circulate is essentially doing exactly the same thing. Remember, if I went from the corner box, touch a quarter, center trade, it's moving the couples. Doing the all 8 circulate does that, but it's also a much better interactive because it makes you feel like you're doing that entire square movement. Oh, everybody's lost. Oh, look, we're all found again. But you as a caller are in absolute control. And what I'd like to point out is this is one of the powers of having modules. That is actually just a different use of a chicken plucker. You could do that from a partner line. You could do that from all sorts of different things, corner line. Do essentially the same type of motions to achieve what it is you want to do. And if you understand what the choreography does, these are great little techniques for you to throw into your calling at any time. So you look like, wow, he's just making that stuff up on the fly. How does he do it?
And
Meanwhile,
adding
he's
to
going,
that,
yeah.
adding to that, if we are in sequence, we will be in sequence afterwards as well. If we would be out of sequence, then we are out of sequence as well. That means if we would have a right-hand lady line out of sequence and do that routine, and afterwards we'll call a pass through, we could run straight into an element left because that would bring us in sequence to the corner.
Yep.
So this is something you may want to work out with the checkers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, yeah, this is really an easy method to get into the other lines, yeah, which I think are adding the variety.
I still don't know why it doesn't like an element left from lines facing out. That's just combinations. Does everybody understand what Michael was saying there?
Yes, very good. Mel?
Yes.
You can also not necessarily have to go to the corner box to start with. If you know you're going to use a corner box,
Absolutely.
Your setup where you said head star through, as though you were heading for the right hand, you actually have your grouping already.
Yep.
So you know that if you do a partner trade or a square through 3, don't pass through. Don't pass through. So, and you can get to your corner box by taking one of your original modules, like your double pass through one.
Yep.
You didn't use double pass through, but here's an opportunity to keep your group together. Double pass through. First couple go left, next couple go right. pass through, wheel and deal, and the centers wheel around, and we finally got to our original corner box, but we just disguised it by keeping the group together, and we started rubber banding immediately.
We actually did that when we were doing the setup. I didn't go from
You didn't use double pass through.
what you've done is you started your setup to a corner box. It's just a different way of getting in. We did it with a double pass through, moving the corner box when we were using flutter wheel and used the double pass through in the cloverleaf. We used the flutter wheel as a setup. And as I said, how you get to your initial position is not as important as getting there. Now this routine with Alan.
One of the things I like about this, Mel, is that you start to sight those 4 people straight away.
Absolutely.
And so it's a mechanism of locking it into my mind, the 4 I'm working with. So I finally get to the corner box and I know them already almost. And you were going, oops, and then turning them around, and you could have done a double pass through and keep them together using double pass through. So you didn't do double pass through in your presentation at all. And I thought that was...
Actually, I did, but...
I don't think you did. You did pass throughs and bend the lines, but you didn't do double.
Hang on. Now you got me thinking, did I?
No, I don't think you did. But that's not neither here nor there, Mel. It was just an add-on.
Yeah, I did it. I said you can even be innovative, put your corner box in a different position variety for a corner box in your setup. And I was using flutter wheel. I used 4 ladies chain, heads, flutter wheel, sweep a quarter, double pass through, leader straight. I didn't use the first left, next right. But like I said, how you get there is not as important as getting there per se. And what Alan's saying is absolutely correct. I've just moved this right back to the beginning because you've done something here. Okay. Oops. Let's back that up. So we got from here, Alan's already set up his corner grouping. So he can start sighting from that corner grouping. And in what he's doing is keeping these 4 together instead of just doing a centers trade. Notice they're still together. He's still got the rubber band around them. He's still got the rubber band around them. He's still got the rubber band around them. They're still got the rubber band around them. And when we got to this position previously, we did a square through 3 or a star through California twirl. He's using a wheel around. He's still got the rubber band around him. So what he's done is he's taken that corner grouping, which is very much like what Michael was saying with a corner line. It's just a different corner grouping. And he's started his isolated sight, moving those dancers around, knowing that as soon as I get that paired couple on the outside, they're in a corner box, ready to do anything I want from a corner box. So that, and it's an excellent example, Alan, because it shows the flexibility of setting up. You don't always have to be nose to nose, face to face. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds and thousands of these things jumping out at you as you proceed. But again, I recommend you start small with what you're comfortable with and then expand out into this. That is an excellent technique, as is Michael's with the corner line.
Another good thing about Alan's routine is that except for the centers wheel around, it was a real big 0, bringing them back to the same footprints, and they were really all working. They had the wind in their face, and you knew that you had a movement, and you can burn them into your mind, and while they're moving, and not have a stop and go and have them standing there and just working one couple or so ever. And so I think this is really great routine to keep them moving. It's a lot of way to go. And yeah, they got their wind in their face and they're dancing. Okay, that's what we're...
It's really taken the standard module from a line where you pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through, first one left, next one right. And I'm just starting that same module, but in the middle of it.
Yep.
I'm saying I've just turned the module inside out to some extent, so it's the same module as they already know. It's just except the first couple left, next couple right. Normally we're starting from that line and then going back to that line.
And for
But
beginner
we're
callers, easy to follow what's happening, and you're keeping them together. So yeah.
very much,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
it's nice flow. And what's really nice about it, when you start isolated site, Alan's set up to this. There's my corner grouping. When you're ready to expand to the corner box, or sorry, the cross the street box or the right-hand box of the sequence, as Mike was saying, this is a nice little 0. Right there. Instead of doing a wheel around,
And if you now do the slide through after that, you have a right-hand lady line, and with our module, you can come back to a corner line.
yep. Okay. Instead of doing the center's wheel around, I can do a center's passer and start in a right-hand lady box. Then I know, because of all the things that I learned from day one, a chicken plucker takes me to a corner box. I can do it my isolated site. I can do what Michael said, set up my right-hand lady line and work my isolated site from there. Or I can come back and do whatever the options of what you can do using isolated site, taking a snapshot wherever you want, are endless. It's up to you as a caller.
Yeah, the funny thing is that we're here right on the cross the street box or right-hand lady box, and we can, with the magic module, get into a right-hand lady line. With that one module, we can get to the corner line and then come back with the magic module and getting back to a corner box.
Yep.
So once you understood the method, you got a very valuable tool with just 2 or 3 rules, and you can really play the thing, right?
Yeah, but as I said, start small where you're comfortable. If you're comfortable starting in a corner box, start with a corner box and practice your isolated site. Practice moving around. Once you're comfortable with that, go to the cross the street box. If you're comfortable starting with a corner line or partner lines, then you start there and you work from there. Because what works for you is what's best. And that's how you're going to be comfortable developing your skills. And like I said, everything that you've learned up to this point, Michael just mentioned the magic modules. Now they convert boxes to lines, but if you go back to the magic module, the reason it was called that is because that same sequence with a star through at the end or with a different movement at the end or a different movement in the beginning will convert partner line to corner box, all those other kinds of things. So there's so much magic in what you already know. This is just adding one small tool. And every time you add a tool, you exponentially grow what you're able to do with the limited amount of choreography that you have. But start small and build from there. Excellent points. Dottie, you've been doing this for a long time. I don't mean that to sound the way it sounded, but having had the pleasure of dancing to you previously, I know you use a lot of isolated site when you call as well. At least that's what it seemed to me. Have you got anything to add?
I think you pretty well covered the topic for the evening. Did a good job.
Well, thank you. That's high praise indeed. For those of you that don't know Dottie, she's probably one of the premier callies in the eastern part of Canada through the northern part of the United States, and has been calling, teaching, and coaching for a long time. And welcome, I think. Anyone else got any comments, queries, points? Anybody use this or a similar system?
Mel, just a query. If you're going to use isolated site, rather than watching number 1 and 4 couple initially, or 1 and 2, wouldn't it be better to just look at your corner box and memorize your corner box? Like draw a line down the middle and pick those 4 as your main ones? And because you're working corner boxes most of the time, for a new caller, wouldn't that be easier to keep track of the couples?
Absolutely. But
Right.
what you have to take into account is every now and then you're going to get a square that looks like that.
Mhm.
So if I do a I have no idea why that track. That's my snapshot footprint.
Mhm.
With real people, it's a lot easier. If I change that to a cross the street box, now I could have some problems. Okay, because the reason that we try and get callers to choose a matched couple at the beginning, rather than once they've started calling and established the corner box, is so that they know in their mind there is a matched couple in that grouping of 8 dancers somewhere. And it could be the matched couple could be the guy with the bald head and the lady with the run in her stocking. That could be what matches it up. Or it could be the lady, I know that lady, I remember that couple because although he looks like a big tough guy, he's cowering in front of her, even though she's only 5 foot nothing. You know, that could be why it sticks in your mind. If they're the matched couple, choose them. You try and identify that at the beginning, because at any point you might find yourself in a situation like this, or you might find yourself in a situation like this. Okay, so if we do isolated site, swing through, boys run, Ferris, wheel, centers, touch, quarter, dodge, centers, overlay, centers, pass through. Come on. Anytime you're doing your isolated site and you suddenly realize, oops, I made a mistake. I called something I didn't mean to call. I now have to resolve this square.
Mhm.
Can you remember who's with who?
Well, you did change colours and that didn't help. But
Yeah,
if you've
that's-
picked,
that's-
let's say you
yeah.
picked your side couple as your primary couple, and then your secondary couple was your corner box. You're
Yeah.
still picking 2 people. So as long as you're getting them back, the side couple to the end, do your Ferris wheel, you've only got the middles to sort out, and you already know the secondary couple from there.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that still work?
What I was
Bottom-
saying is in addressing your initial question though, rather than picking them at the start, you know, you do your head square through, you got your corner box, you can see who's who. Always try and choose, or always try to match at least one couple in a square before you even start calling. And the reason
Well,
is,
that would be the
if at-
sides. Yeah.
if at any
that
time
case.
you match up a couple, regardless of where they are in the square, your square is already 50% resolved. And anytime you put that couple together and on the outside, your square is already 75% chance of being resolved successfully. Now, we all know as callers, and very experienced callers know, that once your square is 75% resolved, if you call Alaman left, 90% of the time, you're going to hit that 25% where it's not resolved. Every caller
That's
knows
Murphy's
that.
law.
That's just Murphy's law. But at least you know where you are. And the thing is, when you're calling, and I made a mistake with the isolated site, I was concentrating on the wrong thing, whatever reason, now I've got to say, I've got to sort out my dancers. Okay, well, I know I've got a purple man and a purple lady together. Oh my goodness, I've got two purple ladies. Which one is which?
My club's mixed up all the time because I have a girl dancing as a boy one time and a boy as a girl next time, and then I've got three.
So
It's all over the place, isn't it, John? Which is good. It's good teaching.
Yeah, and that's why blue and
that's what makes it harder to remember when they're not couples sort of thing, or colours. Well, we had red, white, and blue on Friday, so almost everyone was the same, except for one baseball player.
Absolutely.
Mel, could I share a Steve Turner module with you that gives a lot of options of whether you go to your corner or your right hand, and whether you set the box up somewhere completely different to where they're expecting it.
Absolutely. I'm just normalizing the colors again for ease.
Heads square through 3, which is an unusual start.
Yep.
And cloverleaf.
Hang on, I don't know why that dancer is tracking. Undo.
Somewhere in the settings.
There we go. Okay, so. There we go.
Cloverleaf.
I've got this on fast today. Is everybody okay with that, or would you like it at normal speed? Oh, okay.
Normal would be really good.
So from here, you've got some options. If you do a centers square through 3, you've got a right hand lady in sequence box. If you do a double pass through and you have the leaders trade, you've once again got a right hand lady set up. If you do a double pass through and have everybody trade and then the centers pass through, you've got a corner box over on the opposite side of the square to where it normally is. And so there's a lot of flexibility in this little start, which I found very interesting. And so I thought it was nice to share it. Yeah. So if you just do the original module that Steve wrote, it's a zoom.
Yep.
And the centers pass through, and you've got your standard box.
And it's a great little get in to a corner box.
Yeah. Now, if you back it up and come back to the cloverleaf again, and you do the double pass through, and everybody trade, and the centers pass through, we've now set up a corner box over in the right hand station, which is unusual as well. So that there is a lot of flexibility in that square through 3 start that it's not obvious when you first look at it. But if you took that Steve's original module and then play with it, it gives you a lot of options. Yes.
Yep.
That'd be great.
One of the things I'd like to point out with that is that setup, heads, square through 3, and cloverleaf, that sets up these groupings. Okay, and that's a right-hand lady group. This is the same setting up as a grouping, what Michael was talking about, setting up to the right-hand lady line or the corner line. It's just a different type of setup, but we're looking at a different formation with the grouping. In this case, this is exactly the same as doing, as far as the dancer is concerned, head, star through, and pass through. I've just changed where they're standing on the floor. So I've still got the sides on the outside, but now I've got the right-hand groups over there. I've still got the head man over there. The sides are still on their side of the square. That grouping. If I do a double pass through, I basically put a rubber band around that group of 4 and I've moved them. All you're doing here is getting to your grouping, your isolated grouping differently. And when you do, as you said, the zoom, notice the grouping is still the same. Centers pass through. And what's the rule of using an across the street box or an across the street group? If I want to sort it out, I have to cross play. My first crossing was in the setup. To bring it back to my corner box, I have to have the center group cross again, and I'm back. The rules of this are exactly the same. All you're doing is looking at a different application. And I kid you not, what Alan has said, what Michael has said, what Eric has said, the applications of isolated site, working 2 couples and moving them with these rubber banding techniques through the squares and through the formation is going to open up an entire world to your calling, especially when you have phenomenal little setups like this to to a corner box, or as Alan was saying, to a right-hand lady grouping. You've got so much flexibility. Double pass-through, leaders, partner, trade from that initial square through 3 cloverleaf. I've got that right-hand lady grouping right from the start. I've already crossed the street, snapshot, and from there, pass-through, trade by in a corner box. It is so flexible and will add so much variety to your calling. You will be amazed that you've never seen this before. And believe it or not, I know a lot of very, very good callers, and we're talking internationally renowned callers, that never go past this aspect of site calling. It's all isolated site. They just change who they're working with. Their resolutions are there. And because it's so quick to get to a resolution, they seem to come out of nowhere. 3 or 4 practice focus modules and away they go. You work 2 couples using a focus movement, there you go. It is so simple
She
and
might have
so
left.
easy.
I'm not sure. She was going to go get something. She's going to go get some boxes.
So, anyone else have anything
That's
they'd like
a
to add?
chainsaw or something down there. Yeah. It's down that way.
Sorry, I just muted you there, Steve. Steve, you said bottom 4 should be CC group. Is that correct? I'm not sure what you meant by that. Steve Potter. You typed in a comment, bottom group should be a CC group.
That would be
No? Okay. Right. So does anyone else have anything they would like to add or discuss, put in? All right, well, thank you very much for coming in today. I hope it's worthwhile. Mark Hart, as always, although he stepped away from the keyboard, I'd love to say thank you for doing all the recording and the sessions, putting all the stuff together. This session and all of the previous sessions are available on the OC Callers website, which is out in the email, or if you just type OC Callers or Orange County Callers, you can find all of the materials, these sessions and all of the other sessions, including ones that Dawn does, as well as the class sessions that were done by GSI Caller School. Tune in. Next week, we're going to have Eddie Powell here talk to us. Eddie Powell is the writer and author of the book, So You Want to Be a Caller, and he's just finished his next book, which is the sequel to that, about all the other stuff about calling. So tune in next week to join us to hear what Eddie's got to say. Following that, the next weekend, the weekend after that is open, but then I'm going to have Ed Foote back. Ed is going to be coming back to talk to us about creative choreography and presentation techniques. So it's a matter of looking at what your choreography is, how to be more creative with how you present it, and the creativity in the presentation of choreography as a whole for a better dance for the dancers. So tune in with us on that one. That will be, I believe, the 24th. I see Betsy and Dottie there, and Guido's going to be in with us eventually talking about true hexagons, a simpler way of looking at it. I'm still trying to convince Dottie to come and give us some presentations. I noticed she's gritting her teeth and snarling at me. She hates when I put her on the spot like that. And we hope to have Betsy and a few others come in. We've got lots of topics on the program available for discussion. And if, as always, if there's specific topics like this one that you would like to see or see again with different presentations or from different presenters, we will try our best to facilitate that. So thank you, everybody. And thanks all for the well wishes. I am back at home. I've had the surgery. I am able to move around without pain. I've still got a long rehab and recovery, but I will get there. And we'll see you all next week, hopefully.
Nice to have you back, Mel.
Yes.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Chris.
good to see.
Great to
Glad
see
the
you
opposite
and lots of
success.
good info.
The floor is
Thanks,
open for
see you.
discussion if you want to talk freely about anything.
So everything went well, Mel?
Yeah, it was good. Like I said, they removed part of my spine, then they had to take out some of the bones, remove the discs, and put in new ones and basically decompress the spine. And then they had to remove and decompress the peroneal nerve in the left knee. For the last year, it's been constant pain. It's kind of like slamming your hand in the car door, that intensity of pain, but it was constant. So I had just tuned it out. I didn't realize how much pain I was in until I woke up from surgery and it was gone. I literally started crying from the absence of pain. It's kind of like you missed it. But from there, you know, they didn't expect me to be able to move for at least the first 3 days. I didn't have to learn to walk, but I was up walking without a walker or crutch or cane or any support that day. Came home at the end of the week once they were satisfied that I was able to walk, and you know, minor aches and pains, but I've got probably about the next 6 months to learn how to use my leg and everything else again properly. But it's all good.
You're looking better. You can see the pain's gone out of your face. It's a strange thing, but
a few people have said that. You know.
Yeah.
My girlfriend was the same when she had
I guess that's what they meant by I got a face for radio. I'm painful to look at. Is that what you're saying?
Not now.
Yeah.
So
You seem more relaxed, like you're not, you know. Yeah. There's less tension.
Yeah, well, I have absolutely the best partner in the world. Helen is absolutely fantastic. For the last year since the injury, although I've been able to do everything, and physio said the only reason I was on limited duties was because of it was a 1 in a million chance of the accident happening at work, and that chance is still there. And I hadn't had anything from a neurosurgeon or a spinal surgeon to say, no, we don't want to risk it until they sign off on it. So I've got a very high tolerance for pain, so I just blocked it out. I was just totally ignoring it unless it got extremely bad. And Helen, of course, wouldn't let me cut the lawn or do the vacuuming or doing any of the other stuff. So barest minimum, you know, the most I could do is maybe load the washing machine or stack the dishwasher and maybe run the vacuum over one room. But we got a little Roomba to do that now. Now I've got a medical certificate that says I'm not allowed to do all that. And she says, well, basically no change. You're going to be a lazy house husband again, are you? And she says that with such affection. I guess I have absolutely no. My biggest complaint is I want to get up and do stuff. And she's saying, sit down and relax, read a book, don't do anything. You know,
hey, Mel,
do what a husband should do. Shut up and do
regarding that certificate, can I have the address of your doctor?
I think he'll only do that if you went through what I went through.
Okay.
It's not something I would recommend. Apparently it was pretty major surgery, but it's all good now.
So which hospital was it done in? Melbourne or Albury?
It was done at Macquarie University Hospital, which is a private hospital.
Right.
It was the insurance company looked after that, and it was Professor Kevin Seeks, who is absolutely phenomenal as a neurosurgeon and a doctor. And he specialized, because I've got like 40-degree, a double helix, 40-degree scoliosis in my spine to start with. And he specializes in that kind of stuff. And then with the accident and compression and part of the bone basically cutting into the spinal cord, yeah,
Was
He
was
did
any
his
of that
magic and I'm free.
any of that related to your military history, or?
No, it was just a freak accident.
Oh, right. Anyway, good to see you back on your feet again.
Well, that's the issue. Like I said, you probably saw me jumping up and down a couple of times here, or squatting, because I can only sit about 20 minutes at a time. Then I have to get up and move. So that's why I was bouncing up and down. I was flashing across to the screen, because when you couldn't see me, or when I get up, I move, and get back. If I don't, Helen will come in here and cuff me in the back of the head and say, "You got to get up now."
Yeah, sitting for long periods is never a good thing when you've had that sort of operation.
Strangely enough, sitting in an office chair, which is supposed to be very uncomfortable, but sitting like I am, fully upright with my back in the slight arch, is the most comfortable position for me. Standing or laying on my back, which are normal, they're not comfortable, just because of, I guess, where they did it. But that'll come with time.
Thanks for the session today. I must
my
have
pleasure. Like I said, we did the first session just over a year ago on isolated site, and we've come back to the techniques of isolated site half a dozen times from different perspectives. And I wanted to get onto this one just a little bit earlier, but it's a good time. It's the next evolution in isolated site, the next step, and it's something that for new callers, take your time and practice with it. By now, you should have the corner box, isolated site, working a two-couple calling, and the interactives down pat, because we've been playing with those for a year. Now it's the next step. And I kid you not, if you take these techniques, no matter which way you use, start lines, corner lines, partner lines, boxing, whatever you want to work with that you're comfortable with, and start applying these techniques, it's going to open an entire world of creative choreography and calling that the dancers will have success with, and that you will be in control of, that you never thought you would have before. Yes, Betsy.
I found an occasion to use isolated site at least one time when there was a visitation to the club I was calling at, and the visitors were all wearing their club colors, and I think it was blue and white gingham, and they were the stronger dancers. So all the dancers that were dressed alike were the ones I really wanted to focus on. Yep. So I had to find a way to make sure that I would not focus on the wrong blue and white check couples.
Yeah. And it's really good when you get one of them is in the head couple, one of them is in the side couple position. It's really good that way, because it's just like putting all the dancers that we did in Tam Nations in black. Yes. It really stands out, and you can really play with it. But it's it was like Roz was saying, once you've established who your key couple is, or a key couple, or key pairs, if you will, whatever you're comfortable with in how you set it up, once you set up your corner box, it makes taking that snapshot and using isolated site so much easier, especially if you're going to do, like Alan was saying, setting them up to have your corner box in a different quadrant or a different side of the square. It's still the same Thazard. It's the same Thazard footprint. It's just not the same geographic footprint on the square. And that will really make the dancers feel, wow, I'm going everywhere. I'm not just standing in this corner working with another couple, which is what we get a lot. If we look at a standard scene call, head square through, do side do, swing through, boys run, bend the line, right and left through, flutter wheel, slide through. Well, you've always got one couple standing in the same spot. Swing your corner promenade. That's from Rhythm of the Rain. So, or listen to the Rhythm of the Falling Rain. Now, when you look at that, a lot of our calling in patter is the same thing. We'll do a head square through, and then we'll do stuff with that one couple on the outside, and then we add variety by doing side square through, and we do stuff with the heads. But throughout the routines, either the heads or the sides, whenever they're standing as a couple, they're always staying home. This gives you the advantage of moving that head couple into the side position. They're still working together, but they're in a different location, or they're still across the square, but they're in a different location, still together, but across the square. Terry asked, will Square View let you take a snapshot? I don't know by a snapshot. Do you mean a picture of like a screenshot? I don't know if Square View will let you do that. I use, hang on a second, I'll share my screen for a second. So can you see my screen? Okay, you see this little thing down here at the bottom? Can you see my mouse? Down here at the bottom? No? You see my mouse, my cursor now on the screen?
Yes.
If I go straight down underneath the paste bar and to the right of the Windows icon, can you see that?
No.
No, okay. Can you see my screen now? Still not there?
It's still termination.
That's still terminations. Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I think they were asking about Square View, not terminations.
Share screen one. There we go. Okay, can you see that?
Questions, comments?
No, underneath where it says, can you see where it says type in search? The little bar at the very bottom. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. I have what I call a snipping tool. There's a lot of these that are free. And what that does, if I click on that, it says it's a snipping tool. And if I want to make a screenshot, I just do that, and that's now a picture, a screenshot that I can put into anything. I don't know if Square View, let's get rid of that.
You can type the people in Square View.
Wow, and my volume just jumped about 900 decibels.
I think he's asking about, can you take a camera photograph of the square that's in front of you, so that to help you remember the people.
Oh, is that what you're talking about, Terry? Like taking a photograph?
Well, if you got an iPad, sure.
The older version of Square View had a screenshot option. So that's the screenshot of what you have on Square View. Options, view, help, tools.
Well, there's nothing interesting on Square View.
Wow.
No, I mean, it's what's up? The list is the song you're playing at the moment. That's not interesting.
You can type the names in on Square View.
I'm not exactly sure. I don't think you can take a screenshot. I just do a copy and paste. But you are talking Square View, not terminations. Is that correct, Terry?
But a screenshot has nothing to do with Square View or any other thing. It depends on the system.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I think he was asking, can he take a photo? Some people like to hook up a camera and then take a photo instead of writing down the corners. They just want a picture they can pull up.
Ah, okay. Not a screenshot, a camcorder snapshot. I don't know if it does that anymore, because I think the actual computers that you have are able to record externally from the back of the laptop or from the front of the laptop when you have the cameras. Some people have the cameras, and that's like a camcorder of the floor, and that's what you're talking about. If you got your square set up, you take a camcorder snapshot so you can see who's who in the square. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Well,
I
would be interesting.
I thought Square View used to have that.
Yeah, it did. That's what he was asking. Is it used to have that? Does it still have that? I don't think it does.
Now, really interesting would be if you would photograph your square, right? At the beginning, And if you're lost, then take another photograph, and program will tell you what the resolution is.
Right. Well, if you're going to do that, you might as well just run the version of that program that works on your virtual reality goggles, and and you don't need to worry about resolving. And you can also have a program that also puts up on the overlays on the VR goggles the sequence that you're supposed to call, and you get the same program to write the sequence for you. But when we get to that point, we might as well just put a robot up front.
As much as I hate to say it, there are some computer programs out there that you set the dancers up, you put in your choreography, and then you hit a button and it comes up with resolution options. What can I call next from here? I want to, and you can say, I want to get to a RBO, and it'll give you a series of options. If I call this, then I can call that. And it's very much, I don't know if any of you remember on the old dosado.com, and I think it was Rich Reel, but I'm not exactly sure, but he had that series of right and left through, what can you call next? It's a pick and choose box where you have one call, it leads to 6 calls you can call from there. And if you call that, it's that flow table. There are computer programs that do that already, and they will give you resolution options. You may say, I want a resolution in 5 movements at mainstream, and it'll give you 5 movements at mainstream to take you to the corner box.
Programs to modulate your voice so you may sound like Tom Jones.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have yet to find. Yeah, I have yet to find any of those programs that take into account, is this danceable or is this comfortable? Somebody was calling. Was that you, Chris?
Yeah, no, it was me. It's Terry.
Oh, it's Terry.
I finally figured out how to use all this stuff. What I was asking on Square View, it used to, the older versions had a hotkey that you just hit and it would take a snapshot of your starting formation or anything you could see on your webcam. And by doing all the upgrades, that seemed to disappear. I just wondered if it was still available. But you're
I don't believe it is. I mean, you could always call him or send him an email and ask if he's going to put that back. But one of the things that was going on with the webcams, most people had a webcam which was a remote webcam when this was designed initially, unless you were willing to spend about $8,000 to $10,000 on a laptop to get a built-in camera at that time when SquareView was out. You had a remote webcam which was about $50, and you could click and do that.
Okay.
Most of the laptops now have the camera pointing from the screen, so it's always aimed at the caller, which means you have to physically pick up the camera, turn it around. There are a few now that are out that have like the phones, the cameras on both sides, but most callers don't have them. They just have a simple laptop for their calling.
Yeah, and you could use the phone, so you have a different way. If you got the routines or whatever you got on your laptop, you got your screen free to use and just have your mobile next to you.
I've actually heard of a few callers that do that. They take a photograph of the floor of the square, they zoom in on their phone, and they just set it up in a little dock that they have there, so it displays while they're calling. Just as a quick memory. But
yeah, the Microsoft Surface has the cameras on the other side as well.
For me, I just write it down and hope half the time I remember to write it down. Because when I don't, that's when I say, right, I hope somebody's matched in there. I'm going to go with somebody. And that's when I hit the 75% resolve by pairing up a couple. And I'll guarantee you I'll always hit the 25 when I don't. It will.
I pledge to remember. It's a good training.
Linda, I owe you an apology. I was trying to remember your name earlier, and I could not for the life of me remember it. But in my own defense, neither could John.
What were you trying to remember my name for, Mel?
We were just talking about, Roz, and you sent me a video about 2 years ago of you calling, or a tape, and then you sent me another one a little while ago, and we were just marveling at the differences in 2 years ago to now. It was part of a discussion that Guido had started, because he used to follow a musician around, And he would start by playing a song when he was learning it, and then he'd record it and put it aside. And then once he's ready to start performing it, he played the initial version against his new recorded version just to see what the differences are, because you never see the differences in yourself while you're developing. And both you and Rob were two that we noted. The change in both of you over the last couple of years is absolutely remarkable in your calling.
Cool. Thank you.
One thing that helped me a lot was singing lessons, because I can't sing. So going to the singing lessons, it really helped improve and give me confidence and not just go really quiet when I had to sing. And so I now do hit a note, maybe not every time, but I'm certainly a lot better singer than what I was a year, 18 months ago. And yeah, and she also helped putting your personality into it as well. It wasn't just singing, it was showmanship.
Were you
with the lessons?
Were you in here when I had Tony Oxendine in here? We were talking about singing calls and singing call presentation.
Yes, I think that's when he said he really listens to the music, and yep, which I tend to do.
The one thing that Tony told me back in, oh God, it was the early 90s, I think, was a caller should never, ever try to hit a high note. Never try to hit a high note, never try to hit a no note. A caller should never hit a note, period. A caller should sing a note. And if they can't sing it, put it away until you can sing it. Because when you hit a note, that's a freak accident. When you prepare and you sing a note, that's a presentation. And you can do all the high. I know the expression. You know, I was able to hit the high notes, which everybody can do every now and then. But he said, don't ever try to hit the high notes, because if you're trying to hit the high note, it means you're stretching beyond what you're able to do. Your voice, your larynx, and all those muscles in there are what you have to train and strengthen and get the durability and the flexibility with, like any other muscle. And you've got to train them to reach to those heights, so that you can reach to those heights when you need it, rather than stretch it beyond capability once to hit that high note and then not be able to call for a week. So that expression, I hit the high note, has always stuck with me. I know that's not what you meant, but it just twigged that nip in my mind.
I must admit, I do with the music. Well, there's songs I've canned and put aside. I've gone, no, I just can't do that. And even when I'm looking for music, I'll try singing to it, and I'll go, I'm struggling. No, I'm not getting that one. But she even said about just doing a key lower sometimes, occasionally.
Well, one of the things that I found, like I do some recordings for Tracy on CC Chicago, Omar, also Bob Elling, Riverboat. There's a lot of them. I'll look at what the releases are, and then I'll also look at changing that pitch just a little bit, or changing it just a semitone, to see where it goes. And there's some of them, you know, the recording is absolutely fantastic, but I might change it from a G sharp to a B flat to do the recording for my version, because that's where I'm comfortable singing. And there's a lot of programs like Audacity that you can do a true pitch change, as long as you're not making massive leaps. We're talking like a 0.025 change is going to make such a big difference in your presentation. It's the same with tempo. You can change the tempo from 128 to 126, which is less than just over a second and a half over 4 minutes. But that will make a big difference to how your performance and how your delivery is going to work. And once you get those things set for your music, Squareview has that option of changing the tempo just a little bit and changing the pitch a bit. But if you, it's so sensitive and so much variety. You either sound like the Chipmunks, or you sound like you're doing Fisherman's Luck, as if you were calling Old Man River. You know, there's no real give and take in between those two. But there are programs where you can use, like Audacity, that will help you set these things the way you want them for you. Just remember, though, if you're going to work with another caller, like for instance, let's say Betsy and I got up and we were going to do burgers and fries together. and she's got it set for her voice and I've got it set for my voice. If I do it on my computer, she's going to struggle. If I do it on her computer, I'm going to struggle. So you have to make sure that you let people know if you've made any changes to that. But what happens is Square can allow you to set all those kind of things and load the songs that you want for your calling. Just be aware of that when you're working with other callers. You know, you may have the same song, the same record. You've made changes. Let them know. Practice. That's why it's important to practice beforehand.
Mike Davey, he puts a little +1 if he's changed the pitch up, or -1 if he's changed it down. So he knows it's not the original recording. So if he gets someone else that wants to use it, they can have the original. So that's a good way to differentiate.
I think there's a button on SquareView you can press that resets the resets it back to the original.
Yeah, yeah. You can use SquareView to set up to keep your settings, which is why you'll see a lot of callers if they have SquareView on a phone, on a flash drive or something like that. If they're going to go and visit, they plug it in. Alan Kerr was the one that actually twigged me onto this. He said, SquareView is such a small program that you can actually put it onto the disk or onto the flash drive, so that if you are calling with another caller, he can open up your version of SquareView with all your settings saved, and it just runs through his computer. You can run 2 versions of it, and it's an excellent thing, because if you're just plugging your songs in, it's going to go to his default settings or her default settings, not default settings that you have if you've changed it.
I keep it on my phone, and that's my backup music. If something goes wrong with a laptop, I can just plug in. And I actually did that once.
Yep. And it's great, you know, like for callers that need to read the lyrics and the text. Well, phones are a bit awkward because it's like watching the NBC parakeet on the news. But having the music, if you don't, it is a great thing. And the program is very, very small. That's one of the beauties of SquareView. It is such a small program. You can put on a floppy disk, or not a floppy disk. Yeah, that's what I'm doing myself now. On a thumb drive, you can put the program and like a 2 gigabyte flash drive, which you can't even get anymore. I think they start at 16 gigs now for the small ones. On a 2 gig, you can put that and 40 songs. That's more than enough for an evening of calling.
Yes, I also keep a backup of my music on floppy disks, and I have an Osborne 1 in the trunk. If anybody remembers what that is.
Well, I've got my backup. I'll show you my backup.
I used to caller Keddy, and you can make your settings as well.
Okay, now I feel old. My joke didn't fly because nobody knows what an Osborne 1 is.
No.
Nope.
I don't.
Back in the DOS days.
I know what DOS is.
Yes. Yeah.
It's only because I did a computer course.
I learned on DOS.
Yes, so did I.
Yeah, I was a computer programmer in the early 70s, and it was all DOS then.
And now it's all dust.
Now it's all confusing. An old record.
There's my backup.
Yeah. Yeah, but you've got to find someone with a turntable.
Yeah, exactly.
Got one.
You know, when that's Colors of the Wind on hi-hat. Great song. But that's my backup. I have a turntable which I bought when I was in Europe, which I had to run through a converter, a Hilton 300. I went back to Canada, had to convert it because of the difference in cycles.
Yep.
Brought it over here, bought a transformer, had to change it again because of the difference in cycles and run it through a transformer.
Yep.
And finally thought, you know what? Instead of lugging all this stuff around, because I haven't converted over to digital yet, I called up a friend who's a caller in Sweden that was selling a Hilton 75.
Yes.
And I bought that from him, which he sent over to me, which all I had to do was change the plug because it uses the same power and the same cycles as Sweden. And so I now have a Hilton 75, which I can use here, which is my backup.
That's what I use as well.
And then eventually I had to join the real world, and about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, somewhere in there, I actually started converting over to digital music. Because I found when I think, actually, what was it? It was 2000 and, when did I come to Adelaide the first time? Was that 2005?
So you missed the whole time with the mini disc?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mini disc was wonderful.
I think it was about 2005 or 2006 when I came to Adelaide for the first time. And that was really the kicker to tell me to convert, because my record case was too heavy for carry-on. I only had about, 250 records in my record case. Too heavy for carry-on. And of course it doesn't lock, so you have to put it into the baggage, and we all know how baggage is handled. So I had to pay, I think, an extra $130 to have it as special luggage so that I could take it and put it in the front of the plane as a carry-on, rather than put it in the baggage compartment and let it go through the airport system. And I said, you know what? I think I really got to convert these things to digital.
I think I've been working with the computers for now about, I would say, maybe 15, 16 years. And before that, I worked about 10 years with the mini disc. But whenever I have the chance or to make the decision to buy a record or a digital, I take the record and then I make my copy of the music. So I always have a backup if anything happens with the electronics, and put the records on.
Yeah.
I just copy my digital music files to multiple places.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing that I have been asking, I was asked the other day, I don't have them. Just give me 1 second here.
While he's looking, does anyone have the Unicorn song on MP3? I've got a record. Oh, I managed to get a record.
Are you talking the Square Dance version, Ross?
Yeah.
What do you mean with the unicorn song? The last unicorn from the movie, or?
No.
Alligators and long neck.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Back candles and some
The one from the
champagne.
Irish Rovers.
Cats and rats and elephants. Shows you born.
Because I said originally when I started calling that if my first singing chord would be the Unicorn song. And then my girlfriend actually bought me a unicorn hat to wear for when I did it.
Well, then
and of
you
course
would
I've
need
never
only
done it.
one, but not two.
I should put it on the record player and do it that way. So I'm just so used to doing the computer now.
That could be your theme. You could get a little stuffed unicorn you could carry it with you and sit it on the table.
Well, I'm a bit corny, so the unicorn bit might suit.
And you would have to purchase all the records from Unicorn Records.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you guys know Tracy Brown? Okay. So Tracy has Omar, the Omar label and a couple other labels, but he purchased 4Cs and Chicago Country and all those other kinds of things. I've done a couple of recordings for him, but one of the things that happened is a lot of the patter on the 4Cs label, that's CCCC, have all been lost, and he sent out asking me if I had any of those. He owns them all, but he doesn't have the recordings because they got lost somewhere. And I just wonder if anybody has any of the 4Cs hoedowns. If you get a chance, if you could look, just give Tracy Brown a call. And he's trying to put his collection. He's also got, I've just sent him what I have digitally for that, but there's also, hang on, I'll just put this in the chat here.
I'll have to look.
Okay, I've sent him my recordings of these, but like I said, mine are done from records. But if you have any clean recordings of those songs, those I believe are all on Chicago Country or various others that he owns. He's trying to find the tracks for them. Like I said, I had about 15,000 records when I moved here to Australia, but most of them got lost in the shipping. And I had 100% full loss coverage, which I found out after the fact when I put in the claim. That coverage is good if you lose 100% of everything. I didn't lose 100%, so my coverage was no good, and I couldn't get any of the records back. I didn't even recompense for it. It just happened to be two of the big tri-walls that had all my square dance stuff in them that was all gone when I moved here to Australia. But anyway, so I went from about 15,000 to maybe about 250 to 300 records. So I've lost a lot of that background stuff.
I'll have to find the records, on the computer somewhere. But I somewhere in my basement in file cabinets are the records that Mike Jacobs had in his apartment when he died.
Yeah.
And there's a list and it's categorized, but I don't know where that is right now on the computer because I didn't do it. But I can
Yep.
look.
Those 15,000 were square dance records or total, just other records as well?
Square dance records. That was just square dance records. I was prolific. I would buy anything and everything that I thought was interesting. I probably was able to call maybe 10,000 of them. The other 5,000 were just paperweights.
But 15,000, that seems to be a lot.
It was a lot. It was absolutely horrific. When I was in Germany, I don't think I went to a dance or a convention where I didn't come back with at least 30 to 50 new records. And that was 3 years, probably about 8 or 10 dances a year. And it was always great because, especially at the conventions, because you would have this massive hall and you'd walk in and there would be two sort of not circular, but box tables back to back, like
low top
back to back, big squares with 4 people in the middle, half a dozen record players, all with earphones plugged in, and everything else was just box after box after box of records. And you'd have like the latest release from Royal, and it'd be 100 of these things, and it'd be, and because everybody was always listening, I would just go, oh, okay, well, Royal, I like Royal. What do they got? They go, oh, 30 boxes? Okay, I'll just take one from each box. I didn't even bother listening to them. I'd do that when I got home. I would just, hi-hat. I like hi-hat. Oh, yeah. I didn't care.
I have about 3,000, and I thought I had a lot, but 15,000, my gosh.
Like I said, I went through them, and it was one thing that I would look at is I went for 2 years, and I never repeated a record. It was just, and I realized it was point because I got into this thing when I was starting college. Oh, you want to rotate your record box to make sure that you don't duplicate. And then I realized that this is about 2 or 3 years into calling, that you get known for some calls. One of the earliest records I had was 4-bar B, Ghost Riders in the Sky. And I always wore black in Germany. Well, sorry. I didn't wear black. I had something like 15 or 16 different outfits, but one was, I love the old John Wayne bib type cowboy shirts. I would have the bib half open with the scarf, it was the look back in the 80s, right? And everybody started calling me the Man in Black. Even though I wore black only 1 out of 15 dances I would call, that's what I got associated with, because I did Ghost Riders in the Sky and Folsom Prison Blues. I did a Johnny Cash theme night one night. It was all Johnny Cash songs. That just sort of stuck. And it was actually disappointing because there was a lot of people who come to my dances. Look, we really want you to do Ghost Riders, but you haven't done it in so long. I said, oh, well, I haven't got it with me. I said, well, you called it the other, I said, yeah. And I was rotating. I realized that rotating records is one thing, but when you get known for songs, you better have those songs ready because somebody is going to ask you to call that. So Ghost Riders in the Sky is always in my record box, or my calling thing. Piano Man is another one. And there's a few songs that are always there. And like I know when I went to Adelaide, people said, oh, I'm coming to Adelaide to do the state convention down there. Oh, great. People were sending me songs that they wanted me to call down at the state convention, some of which I didn't even have. So I had to go and find these songs. And it's really a nice feeling. But I tell you, it was a big eye opener. So anyway, back to what Tracy was doing. I put Tracy's email address there. Like I said, he's bought a lot of the record labels, as has Bob Shiver and whatnot. But there's a lot of callers out there that have really good quality sounds or really good quality conversions. And there's a lot of music out there, which is a lot of the older stuff, which is really, really good. But they're the forgotten labels or the lost labels that the tracks were lost on. So if you have these and you're able to contact the record producers, they own the rights to the record. So there's no problem sending them back the original soundtrack that they can extrapolate from. If you can, send it to them or get in contact and see what they need, because you may just have something they need. And then they can re-release some of these golden favorites back into the community.
I would like to add something with the singing calls you said before when answering to Ross. Sometimes there's the mistakes of people doing too much singing in the singing calls. That means there's got to be a distinction between the calls, which should be called, and the original lyrics, which then should be sung.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you sing too much, the calling parts, it will not sound good. It goes like, oh, okay. So you got to be really distinctive. There is nothing wrong with calling the calls and then singing the rest of the singing call. So yeah, and you always got to find your way anyway.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Michael.
Welcome.
I try to do that.
If you remember Tony's session too, if you look at music, patter call and sing call, but music that speaks to you and that can carry the floor, patter calls, it's really important that you don't overshadow the music of a patter call with your voice and the filler. Filler is not killer. Don't ever, some people like that saying filler words are killer words. Filler words are killer words when you use them badly or you overuse them. There's nothing wrong with saying head square through 4 and muddle in the middle to the tune of the fiddle, if that helps your time, or square through and you get 4 hands around you go. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not something that should be a habit. It should be done with a purpose. If you're going to use it, you're doing it with a purpose. But if you've selected really good music, pattern music, head square through, let the music carry, spin chain through, let the music carry you through that motion. That becomes even more important with the singing calls. I'm just taking this from what Tony was saying in his presentation here. He lets the music speak to him before he'll even record a song to see what it is. And if he has to change it too much, he won't use it, because that music, if it speaks to him the way it's written, it's there for that way for a reason. And if he's got to change it from something that's so drastically one way to something that's the other way to make it work for square dancing, he won't do it, because it's lost the reason it spoke to him in the first place.
It's no longer the same song.
Yeah, it isn't. And when he does it, you'll hear him when he does the songs. He'll let the music, the melody line, the rhythm, or whatever it is, and sometimes it's just a bass beat rhythm that'll go through. He'll let that carry the, head square through, he's got it. And he'll just let the music carry you through that and position you to when you meet her or whatnot, do, si, do. Like I pointed out in one of the sessions, Tony has a habit of using the word honey, flutter wheel and pick up the honey, turn your honey, something not noticed before, but maybe I'm just anally retentive and a bit pedantic, but I listen and I study these guys that I admire so much on how they do these deliveries. And I see these things that recurs, but you'll never hear it and notice it unless you're really trying to pick it apart, because the music is carrying you through. He sings beautifully, but sometimes he'll choose not to sing because of the music. So use what you got. Yes, Scotty.
So let me understand this list that you've just given us here, or at least what I can see at the moment, which is just the bottom of it. Are we talking about specific labels?
Those ones, I believe, are all on Chicago Country, which is the vast majority of those were on Chicago. That was just an email that Tracy sent me when I started recording for him. I'll just see if I can pull up the email here.
I'm asking because when I'm looking at this list, I've got 12 of these records.
Yeah.
I mean, most of them I own.
Yeah. And like I said, a lot of these are ones that, like when record labels change hands, they've got the tracks, they've got the digital DATs, they've got the original press recordings, but in a lot of cases, a lot of them got lost. I believe all of those are on Chicago Country.
Old Time Rock and Roll is Rhythm Records.
Old Time Rock and Roll has been done by a number of different labels.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm asking. So what label are we looking for?
I'm pretty sure they're all Chicago Country, but that's why I put Tracy's email on there. Before you send them, it'd be great. Just flick them an email and say, look, Mel said you bought these labels and you're missing some of the original tracks. I've got this on this label. Is that what you were looking for? Just to make sure that we're not, breaching any copyright laws or anything like that.
Yeah.
The other one was, he also said 4 C's, CCCC. I think it was David Cox's label.
Yeah.
He's missing the patterns for the 4 C's labels. He's been in contact with David, but somewhere along the line, the patterns got lost. So he's looking for those as well.
I was just looking on my computer. I can see that Ian Rudder's got Snoopy's Christmas on CC 009.
Yeah, and like I said, I had a few of those, but mine are converted from records.
Yeah, I got Feliz Navidad, I think.
And that I've sent, but again, my tracks they sound like records, which I love that sound. I love that natural sound, but not if you're going to, if you're going to buy an MP3. And if nothing else, it could be Tracy's just going to take the originals. He's going to, redigitize them and get clean tracks out. And it's the same with the others. There's even on Rhythm or on any of the other labels, there's tracks that have been lost through time, or for whatever reason, in the transfer, that the original soundtracks of the recordings were lost. So if ever you're able to help out some of these record producers with the recordings, because they own the rights to them, if they're missing something from that and you've got it, ask them.
I'll have to go through the records under my table at home. I've got 4,500 of them. I'm pretty sure I've got Silver Bells. I'm not sure, and Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear, but I'm not sure whether they're on CC.
Yeah, I've got Silver Bells, but I haven't converted it. It's still in a record form.
I think I have Teddy Bear on Rhythm.
Yeah.
That one's probably been done quite a bit too.
Yeah, but like I said, I double check with him before you send. I mean, Tracy's good. If you send him something you shouldn't have sent, he'll delete it. But it's just he's looking for things that have been lost through the time on the labels that he owns. And if you can help out, that's great. If not, that's great too. At least thank you for looking.
Just out of curiosity, where is he based out of?
That is an excellent question. I only talked with him. I never really asked him where he is. Hang on a second.
Does he want the cleaned up digitals, or does he want the actual records?
I think he's looking at the digital, but it's something that you can let him know. hang on, Tracy. Okay, so Tracy is now the owner of Cimarron, Roofer, Rebel Records, John's Records, Corral Records, Golden Throat Records, Black Hat Productions, Big Mac, Scope, Sunny Hills, Brahma, Black Mountain Valley, Thunderbird, Falcon, Lamont, Pulse, Nickel, Chicago Country, Lamplighter, Cross Country, Flip, Quadrille, Cardinal, 4-Bar B, Alliance, Gren, FTC, Top, Mustang, Rocket, the Set in Order, Square Dance Society Records, Sunshine Records, Venture Records, Pioneer, Square Time, Sundown Ranch, B-Bar H, Cloverleaf, and Whispering Pines.
Holy cow.
What's that label? Holy cow.
That's a new one. I got some 78s you can have. Trouble is you need something to play them on.
Yeah, so if you ever go to squaredancemusic.com, which is a great place, you'll see and just look up Tracy on there. He should be on there somewhere. It just says those are released with the permission or owned by Tracy Brown, because he has the ownership to reproduce on all of those labels.
That's a lot of my favorite labels. I think I have stuff from every one of those.
Yeah. And like I said, in today's society, with square dancing the way it's going, unless we find a way of making it attractive to people to get into dance again, and which means we're all going to have to change our mindsets about what square dancing is and what we're trying to present. Our record producers that are working their backsides off and not making a heck of a lot of money at it are going to start dwindling. And a lot of these records, a lot of these labels, a lot of the old favorites are going to start disappearing. And there are some great producers out there. There's some great new producers out there, but they're only going to be able to do this if we keep a market for them. So if ever we can help them out, we do. Like I said, I record on, I think, 4 different labels now. I don't charge for recording. I just do it because I love the activity. And I'm working with Bob Elling to do some singing calls with the SSD program, which are geared for the SSD program, because that's what we want. Great. And it's there because there's a lot of people that are going to start teaching and calling, but they're not callers per se yet. They haven't developed that skill. So they're working in the same vein as the old-fashioned tape clubs. In my area alone, there's a tape club that's been running for about 10 years. Like my area, that means it's only a 2.5-hour drive from here, which is actually one of the closest clubs to here. But they've been going for that. And the guy that's been doing it has been doing it off his back, off of tapes and recordings and records for the last 10 years. And the only way that they can do that is to keep producing music and keep providing stuff that's going to keep people interested. So help them out. You know, Rick Hampton, Rod Shuping, Shauna, the Schick label, all these labels that are coming out now with phenomenal recordings. You know, they're the next evolution of the industry with music, but there's still a lot of really, really good music out there, like 4-Bar B, Ghost Riders. People say, oh, we got to get new music. We got to get new music. It's the most requested song I get, and it was written in 1949. Or sorry, it was released in 1949. It's not the newness of the music, it's the presentation and the fun and the way that music makes people feel. And a lot of these old labels had music that was designed for one reason, and that's to make people feel good, regardless of its age.
Well, it was handmade music and not so much electronic stuff, which comes quite noisy across sometimes with the settings, you know, with all the technical and digital music type. With the real instruments, that sounds different.
Yep. I've got Ghost Riders on 4-Bar B and on hi-hat. I've got two versions.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of my old favorites is 76 trombones.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't actually danced to it in years. Jeff used to call it, but I'll have to request it. Sorry?
Somebody was actually looking for that the other day.
Well, Jeff's got it. I know that for sure. I don't know what label, but
it's really a good piece to use that right after you've taught Grand Square.
Oh,
Have them
okay.
march a side space Grand Square, sing the lyrics, and let them march it out to 76 trombones. They can even play an instrument if they choose.
Yeah.
Jeff's got it
Maybe
on
I'll better get
TNT.
it.
Jeff's got it on TNT.
Okay. Well, we've just taught Grand Square to our learners, so. And I think
We're
they're
not-
finally getting Square through 4. They were a lot better on Friday, I thought, didn't you, Jeff? John?
Yeah.
At last, but one of the learners wasn't there. I don't know. Maybe she's struggling more. So.
I actually called a dance last week.
A real one?
Yeah, they don't, where I live.
No, a fake one.
I mean, we're real, not real people, but people in a hall.
It wasn't described as either real or fake. I think what the article said was, like mentioned earlier, a freak accident, but no injuries were reported.
I just laugh at those questions sometimes because we'll ask a question like that, and when you think about it, there is no other possible answer. And it was like, and it just reminded me of the other day. I was having a shower, and Helen came in to get something out of the bathroom, and goes, "I'm washing my hair," and says, "Helen, is that you?" And think about that.
You sure
Who the
hope so.
heck else would it be? Yeah, I'm not waiting for this deep bass voice. No, it's not. Oh, okay. It's just one of those questions that has no real other answer, but we ask it anyway.
What she should do is get a recording of a male voice, and the next time you do it, actually play it back.
Everything's closed still where I am, because most clubs shut down in the summer because a lot of them use the schools, which are not available anyway, and which we have no idea when they're going to be available again. Presumably sometime next year, but who knows? And the other thing people use are the rec centers, and those are closed still because of the pandemic. But there's now, if you go just 10 miles away in a certain direction, you'd be over in Maryland, and a lot of stuff over there, a lot more stuff seems to be opening up. But over where I am, it's still closed down. But there's one group that dances at a retirement community home, and they have all their own facilities and everything, and they have, of course, a beautiful hall, and they're dancing, and so they had me over. Not this past week, but before that, and did the regular 2-hour dance, and it was a alternating, allegedly mainstream with beginners who've been there for just a few lessons so far. So that was pretty fun.
Oh, that's good. I know Ed from Baltimore in August, she's going back. She's going to alternate, have 1 week in a hall. She's got a new hall. So 1 week on, 1 week off, and she'll Zoom 1 week and do a live call the next. But the live call, she's going to try and set it up as well, so the Zoom dancers can actually join in with the live ones. So we don't know how it's going to work yet, but it'll be an interesting thing to see.
There was a group a few years back that wanted to hire me to go be their caller, but they were a little bit far away, and so because of the increased costs from the distance, they couldn't quite afford me. And then they called up and they had an idea. They said, "Oh, wait a minute, we heard about this thing where some guy in California, who was probably I'm guessing Darren Galina." I talked to him, but it was long enough ago that I forgot. But anyway, they said. And so we have this idea of maybe you could just do it by Skype. You could just sit at your house. And I said, well, yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I don't know. I'd certainly give it a try and see if that, if that sort of thing worked. And they said, well, you wouldn't be the first person in the world to do it. However, that did not fly. They got all excited, but they were unable to sell it to the board. However, luckily for me, they came up with an alternative plan, which is, okay, we found the money.
Oh,
come on down in person, and it was and
that's always a good option.
Yeah, and it was a very wonderful. It was just a wonderful club.
Jeremy Butler did one recently where he called on Zoom to a floor somewhere. They had the sound and everything all set up in the hall, and apparently that worked. I don't know what he did with it, but and I don't know what group it was.
I think that might be a thing going forward now that people are so much more comfortable with video in general because of Zoom.
Yeah.
Well, imagine in Australia if we had a national, we could get you guys on to do a tip and it'll be on Zoom and have live as well, have a mixture with it.
That'd be cool.
Okay, Tracy, took me a while to find it, but Tracy is in Flatwoods, Kentucky. Kentucky. So I put his contact details, number, and email in the chat. And that's
I could call to Australians and not have to go to a place where everything is trying to kill me.
Oh, we're not that bad.
I know.
We're not all poisonous.
I'm just teasing. I would love to see that country someday.
Yeah. Well, we've got a national couple of years in Adelaide. Adelaide's coming up, so.
You just remember, Chris, not everything here is trying to kill you. Some things just like to mess you up a lot.
Well, if you're in the bush and you hear something rattling or something moving in the bush, you don't necessarily go up to see if it's a lizard or a snake. You just leave it alone.
If I hear something rattling, I'm not going anywhere near it. I don't care whether it's I don't care whether it's in the U.S. or in Australia.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the
don't rattle. Our snakes don't rattle.
U.S. snakes are a lot they don't give you warning here.
No. I nearly stepped on one.
Like we've got mosquitoes here, but it could be worse. Like I know where I lived in northern British Columbia, we didn't have the little mosquitoes there. They flew around. They had a bib with a picture of a lobster and carried a knife and fork with them.
Yes,
well, I've been bitten by a brown
familiar
snake.
with that one actually.
Now, where were you in British Columbia?
I grew up in northern British Columbia when I was a kid, but I call the Okanagan Valley home. I was born in Edmonton, raised in Fort St. John, those areas, moved down to the Okanagan Valley, and then I joined the Army, played soldier for a living. And so home is wherever my hat is usually, but I call the Okanagan Valley of BC home. When I retired from the military, I moved to a little place in Trail, or in Nelson, just outside of Trail. But most of my time in Canada in the Army was spent in Ottawa, and then I traveled from there.
So have you heard about the forest fires?
Yeah, in Kamloops and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You have extreme heat in Canada, right?
Yeah.
In the States.
Yes.
And
Yes.
with the fires now where a whole village or city was burned down, are you close to that, Dottie?
No, I'm on the opposite coast.
No, I am the one that's closer.
Oh, are you? Oh, gosh.
Yes. Yeah, so Lytton would be on the way down to Vancouver normally for me.
Okay.
Where are you?
So I'm in the middle of BC. I'm in Prince George. We're called the hub of BC. Yeah.
No, they call themselves
the hub of BC.
Pardon me?
Are you in danger of getting some fires too?
We'll see. It could change on a dime.
Is it hot? Are you in the heat?
It's cooled down, but it was in the 40s during the week. Yeah. So we hit we were under the dome, right? So the heat couldn't go away. So we broke records.
Okay.
But
I heard that the fires were lit by lightning, right?
Yes. And that happens a lot. Yeah. So I was 2 years ago, we were on evacuation alert a couple of times.
Okay.
So, you literally, you plan for it, right? And I went to a provincial square dance a couple of
She's
years
just always
ago.
louder than everyone else.
Huh?
She's always louder than everyone else.
Okay, Al can here. Let me turn it
Oh,
down.
you're
a bit.
not muted.
Okay, so is this better?
Yeah.
I thought
Okay.
you were fine.
So
I could hear.
a couple of years ago, I went to the provincials in around Vancouver, and on the way back, unbeknownst to the people that were driving down, the wildfires had started, and so we walked into the square dance hall in Vancouver, and everybody is like, "Oh, you guys are okay," because everybody was worried. And so they had closed the roads, and I went back up because Prince George was evacuation alert at that time as well. And so I am driving, and there's a fire just like a car width away on the other side of the creek.